Number 10. Artie. Arthur Artie Maddox is an interesting one. His mutant abilities manifested when he was just 11 years old, leaving him disfigured and mute, but granting him the very interesting ability of visual telepathy. This means that Artie can connect to his or others' thoughts, and he can project those thoughts as psionic holograms or pictograms. This is really useful for Artie, specifically as he is a mute, but at the same time, I gotta say I think that regular telepathy would kind of be a bit more useful, and I don't know. Doesn't matter, because Artie's power is more cool, because he can even make large-scale holograms and use them in battle, usually for defense. But Artie can also perform something called a mind lock that allows him to paralyze someone physically or mentally. I kinda hope he keeps evolving his powers, but we'll see. Number 9. I Scream. I Scream, that's I, like this, or Scream, like is a villain of the X-Men who decided he needed to destroy the X-Men using their Danger Room. He actually got pretty far in that plan too, and he was able to overload Cerebro, taking down Professor X temporarily. Now I'm going to assume he did that by giving the device a brain freeze, because if you hadn't guessed, Ice Scream can turn into any flavor of ice cream, and then everyone screams for Ice Scream's ice cream. No, that's not true, sorry. But using his abilities, he was able to enter the X-Men's mansion and the Danger Room before Xavier came back too and lowered the temperature in there, freezing Ice Scream's ice cream form, which is when a clown turned him into a banana split and split from the scene. Just go read Anoxio the Clown from 1983, you'll get it. Make sure you guys check out the other videos in this series and drop a like on this video to show us your support. Number 8. Peeper. Peeper, or Peter Quinn, first appeared in Captain America Annual number 4 in May 1977 as part of Magneto's new Brotherhood, a brotherhood of verbally based villains: Slither, Shocker, Lifter, Burner, and Peeper. Seems like a bit of lazy writing over at Marvel to me, but this group actually went under a couple different names under a couple different leaders, including Mandrill and the Red Skull. Peeper though is definitely the most interesting of the bunch, and he's also more relevant as he has appeared recently as part of Abigail Brand's sub-team called the Six. On this team, Peeper played the role of the Eye, using his abilities to examine Chiron or Kerbon particles. That's because Peeper has the gift of telescopic, microscopic, and X-ray vision using his enlarged eyes, but he also had an offensive ability in the form of yellow or red concussive optic blasts. He also seems like a decent dude, despite usually being a villain. Number 7. Broo. Saying that a mutant is unique kind of feels redundant, as most mutants have pretty unique abilities from others of their kind, but Broo is even more unique as he is not a mutant of the human race. Instead, Broo is a mutant of the incredibly violent and parasitic insectoid alien race known as the Brood. This essentially means he can actually feel compassion and friendship, and he was born separately from the Brood hive mind, meaning he is not loyal to a Brood queen. He also possesses super genius levels of intelligence, making him one of the smartest students at Jean Grey's School for Higher Learning. So, Broo's X gene mutation is only really mental or psychological in nature, but being a Brood, he brings natural body armor and fanged jaws to a fight, and recently, Broo actually consumed a king egg, making him king of the entire Brood species, including the Brood queens. Number 6. Big Bertha. Bertha Crawford, originally Ashley Crawford until she changed her name, had the mutant ability of total control over her body's physical size and mass. She can add or take away hundreds of pounds to herself at will, controlling her figure. This allowed her to become the highest paid fashion model in America at one point, but also allowed her to don the Big Bertha superhero persona. Using her abilities to add bulk and mass, she actually increases her durability and her strength to a peak of lifting 50 tons, allowing her to jump huge distances like the Hulk. No matter what size Bertha alters herself to though, she has a high level of athleticism. Ashley rebranded herself into a plus size model, which is when she changed her name to Bertha, and you know what? She still kinda killed it. Good job. Number 5. Decimus Furius. Decimus Furius actually began his life all the way back in ancient Rome, where his mother and father took their own lives, leaving Decimus homeless on the streets. In 281 AD, on the cusp of the afterlife due to his hunger, his mutant powers activated. This gave him super strength and durability, alongside an extremely bestial form similar to like a minotaur, but almost as if it was made of stone. He's really super cool looking, honestly. But his more powerful ability would be empathic war infection. This basically means that Decimus can infect anyone who he strikes with a thirst for war, which will send them into a rage-filled state. It also acts as a defensive tool against telepaths who try to read or control his mind, causing the war infection to overcome the telepath. He has also been shown to be able to piece himself back together after being blown up, which is funny because he blew up when Phantom X made him feel love, which did not compute, and he just went boom. He became Apocalypse's final horseman of war. Number 4. Warpath. James Proudstar is the younger brother of John Proudstar, also known as Thunderbird, and he always idolized his brother, but in that idolization he actually limited his own powers to a degree. Mostly, his mutation boosts up his physical capabilities, granting him super strength that has had various different levels, once having Hulk levels of strength, but another time struggling to fight an alligator. He can run at 100 miles per hour, and his stamina allows him to exert himself for 24 hours without rest. He can withstand a hell of a lot more than a regular human, like falling several stories or being hit with energy blasts. His agility and reflexes are increased to the point of dodging bullets, and his senses allow him to see in the dark and hear sounds other humans can't. After some training with Pete Wisdom, Warpath has shown the ability of self-propelled flight and a regenerative healing factor. What's really interesting is that while working with Ghost Rider, James gained shamanistic abilities like perceiving spirit energy. He's also probably one of the best mutant combatants, whether it's unarmed or armed with his vibranium daggers. Number 3. Gideon. I believe Gideon here is the first external to make this list. The externals include immortal mutants like Selene and Apocalypse, but they all share a psychic link which separates them from other immortal characters. Gideon was born during the 15th century, and aboard Christopher Columbus's first expedition, he actually succumbed to scurvy, and his life was changed forever when he resurrected and gained his mutant abilities. Like all externals, Gideon is immortal and no longer ages. He can also resurrect himself, as confusing as that sounds since he's immortal, but unique to him is the ability of power mimicry, giving himself the powers, advanced skills, and talents of any being, android, or even battlesuit, and he's been able to gain the powers of 3 people at once. But more than that, his powers allow him to fully understand how to use that other person's powers to the point that he can even overcome the original user of said power. Number 2. Cypher. Cypher, or Doug Ramsey, has omnilingual translation abilities, and considering that communication is an essential part of our everyday lives, whether that be with other humans, devices, or even our own selves, I'd say he's pretty powerful. He can translate language of literally any origin, even alien. He can read and decipher codes, including computer code, as well as read body language, subtext, and unspoken intention. More recently, everything he sees is interpreted as information, meaning he basically kind of just reads life. He can read body language to the extent he is able to predict people's moves before they make them. He can learn and perform spells for magic users, and he even created his own overly complex language that makes him immune to psychic mind reading. But Doug actually merged with Warlock, essentially giving Doug techno-organic shapeshifting abilities on top of everything else. And for our number 1 spot, we are going to talk about my number 1 favorite X-Men, Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner was first introduced in Giant Size X-Men number 1 in April 1975, with the mutant ability to biophysically displace himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it with a subconscious sense, and then return back to our dimension in a different location, essentially teleporting. This all happens so fast it's almost instant, and it always is accompanied by the signature BAMF sound. Although he can teleport really far, even across the world more recently. He avoids teleporting to places he hasn't been before, or places he can't see, as he can accidentally end up appearing within solid matter, which could potentially end his life. Although he does have a small amount of spatial awareness that at least keeps his feet from teleporting into the ground, and he can even use the little demon things known as BAMPs as teleportation beacons that allow for teleportation to places he hasn't been before, even across dimensions. Through his unique physiology, he gains a few extra abilities as well, like a prehensile tail, microsuction hands and feet, and flexible bone structure, but he can also camouflage himself, bending light using the Brimstone dimension. But what a few might not know is that he actually became immortal thanks to the fact that recently he sacrificed his soul in heaven to come back to life, which is good because I never want to lose this legendary blue.
Coming in at number 10 as a bit of an honorable mention is the Batman Who Laughs. Now, the reason this villain is only getting an honorable mention is because he's relatively new and has had a huge amount of publicity in the few years since his creation. But I still do think this character deserves some more exploration further down the road. As a twisted combination of Bruce Wayne and the Joker from the Dark Multiverse, the Batman Who Laughs was an incredibly intimidating villain that only got even more powerful when he gained the powers of Dr. Manhattan and became the Darkest Knight. But seeing as how he was then killed by God Mode Wonder Woman, and I do think that the Batman Who Laughs deserves a comeback in the near future so that we can see what really happens when the true Batman and the Batman Who Laughs go head to head. Coming in at number 9, coming in at number 8, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only 9 issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, using a weather machine to hide his minions' robberies with a thick layer of fog, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power in Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and why he definitely deserves to come back in a major Batman storyline.
In at 7, nobody. Morgan Ducard was the son of Henry Ducard, a world-renowned assassin, and Felicity Strode, a spy sent to kill Henry, who instead fell in love with him. I have to say though, that's the dream. Having a love so strong that even your assassin can't kill you, that's goals. From an early age, though he did not see him often, Morgan idolized his father. When his mother was contacted by the people who had hired her to kill Ducard years ago, telling her that if she failed to fulfill her end of the deal that they would kill her son, the young boy stabbed his mother to death with a kitchen knife. His father saw what he had done and appreciated Morgan's devotion to him, deciding to train his son to become an assassin like him. Ah, family bonding. Several years later, a young Bruce Wayne came to France hoping to train under Henry Ducard, but Bruce drew more attention to himself than he should have, and Morgan was sent to assassinate him. The American and Frenchman fought each other, but due to his prior training, Bruce ended up defeating Morgan and surviving the attack. This is when Morgan grew a hatred for Bruce, since after surviving, Henry decided to train him instead of killing him being Bruce Wayne in this scenario. Nobody would then go on to train Bruce's son Damian Wayne, and even was killed by Damian. And at 6, the Court of Owls. They are a violent cabal who uses architecture and murder to yield political influence throughout history. Their legend is told only through whispers and a nursery rhyme that bears their name. To carry out their interests, they employ a breed of highly trained assassins known as Talons. The leaders of the organization appear to be human and wear owl masks on their faces, whereas the rest of the court on the other hand are mutated and appear to actually be human-owl hybrids. Like, their owl-like distorted faces, long claws, and their eating style seemingly prove this, unless they're just really into roleplay. The Court of Owls takes notice when billionaire playboy philanthropist Bruce Wayne announces plans to rebuild and reshape Gotham City for the future. He is then sentenced to death by the group, and their assassin, the Talon, attempts to kill him during a meeting with politician Lincoln March. They struggle at the top of Wayne Tower, and the killer survives a fall from the top. Batman then begins to investigate, and he discovers that their society has secret headquarters throughout hidden rooms in every building established by the Alan Wayne Trust, so yeah, a little personal. Halfway through in at number 5, Clayface. Basil Karlo, the original Clayface, was an actor who was driven mad when he heard of a remake of his classic horror film that he starred in, Dread Castle, and that he actually wouldn't be playing the lead role. Adopting the persona of Clayface, the villain from one of his old films, he became a serial killer that was targeting the cast and crew. He was eventually stopped by Batman and Robin, but later Karlo would actually be imbued with the powers of Clayface's Preston Payne and Sandra Fuller. While we may know about this character, the actual mysterious part of him comes from his DNA and his ability to copy a person's DNA. This actually ended up causing Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler, to learn Bruce's identity while he was recovering from cancer in the Lazarus Pit, since Clayface pretended to be a reanimated Boy Wonder and caused the epiphany. There's also the mystery of how in some continuities detached parts of his body can actually develop their own sentience, like in the Harley Quinn animated series, aptly known as the Quinverse. This is actually a thing. Yeah, you can lose his hand and then his hand will gain sentience. It's weird. And at 4, Joker's daughter. This is just a girl who finds Joker's face and then stitches it onto hers and then goes berserk. So honestly, it's not really Joker's daughter, but I believe it. The only person that I think could commit such an act is in fact the Joker. I mean, like, he did. He cut it off and then put it back on for death of the family, but anyway. While maybe not as prolific and accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely mysterious enough to make this list. Even if I'm pretty sure plenty of people know about her, but hey, that's fine. It's about mysterious, not unknown villains, right? Not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Card Queen, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make a family reunion real weird. But in actuality, she ended up being Dula Dent, Two-Face's daughter, I guess, apparently, which is still seemingly BS, but hey, that's why it's a mystery.
Coming in at number 3, we have the iconic Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face. Originally fighting for the side of justice with Bruce Wayne as Gotham's district attorney, Harvey Dent's mind was split in two following an acid attack that scarred exactly one half of his face. Making all of his decisions through a coin flip based on his past childhood trauma, Two-Face is one of the most well-known villains of Batman, but hasn't gotten a chance in recent years to really headline an event as a villain, usually only taking the focus in smaller storylines or as a supporting character. Personally, I think Two-Face is long overdue to take his place as a master of the criminal underworld. Coming in at number 2, we have Bruce Wayne's former childhood friend and current adulthood enemy, Hush. Born under the name of Thomas Elliot, Hush as a child was one of the first people to inspire Bruce on his road to becoming Batman. However, Thomas Elliot was a deranged child, wishing to have his family's fortune for himself and killing both of his parents to have it. After traveling the world and training to become a warrior, Hush adopted his supervillain persona and allied himself with the Riddler to rid the world of Bruce Wayne, organizing many of his enemies and even allies against him. And while the villain has appeared several times since, it's been a while since we've truly gotten to see the master manipulator Hush at work. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Phantasm, aka Andrea Beaumont. Originally debuting in the animated film Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, Andrea Beaumont was Bruce Wayne's first love, the girl he almost considered abandoning his mission as Batman for before the mission had even begun. Unfortunately for Bruce, Andrea and his relationship was forced to an end by the death of her father, causing Andrea to begin her descent into becoming the vengeful spirit known as the Phantasm. As a villain with an incredibly cool design and a very personal connection to Batman, the Phantasm has been only recently seen in the comics, and definitely takes my top pick for the villain that most deserves another storyline.
Moving on to number 10 with Marrow. Of all the mutant powers out there, I think the one I would actively try to avoid having, if that was how it works, is the abilities of Marrow. Now, Marrow's actual mutant ability is a hyper-accelerated metabolism, and it's through this that she's able to do what most people know her for: accelerated bone growth. She has the ability to control the growth, shape, and toughness of her bone structure, even having it protrude from her body and be used as weapons that she can remove. She can also use this ability to create a sort of armor. Now, the only problem, and the reason I wouldn't want it, is that it hurts when she does it, and just imagine how much that would hurt, having your bones protrude from your body. no thank you, I'll pass. Luckily, she has a very rapid healing factor that also gives her enhanced strength, agility, and reflexes, and as a little bonus, this girl has 2 hearts, which allowed her to actually survive when she had one pulled out. Nice. Number 9, Eunice the Untouchable. Now, I gotta say the force field abilities of wrestler, criminal, and villain Eunice the Untouchable definitely have some major drawbacks. The positives are great. His force field can withstand blows from the Incredible Hulk. He can project his force field to move objects. He could also use the shield to be untouchable, hence the name, opening it up to be able to grab things and eat. Now, the drawback would come in the fact that there have been multiple times where Eunice had his abilities increased, but to a point he couldn't even control his own abilities. At this time, his shield would literally close him off from everything. He couldn't grab things, eat food, or even breathe oxygen, which caused him to even pass out on one occasion, which luckily deactivated his powers, allowing him to actually live. Maybe if he used his powers for good, the writers would make him less self-destructive, but these are the cards you're dealt, bro. Guys, if you are indeed enjoying this video, do make sure to give it a little thumbs up. It's all you gotta do to let us know that you're enjoying what you're seeing. Thanks, nerds. Appreciate you.
Number 8, Thumbelina. Are you getting tired of seeing all these super-powered beings who look like they just walked off a runway? Well, lucky for you, there is Christina Anderson, who goes by the moniker of Thumbelina. She's short, she's stout, she's slow, and she's always being made fun of. But she has a pretty useful mutant ability. Thumbelina can shrink down to 1/4 of an inch, making her an excellent candidate for missions of espionage with the Mutant Liberation Front. The best part about Thumbelina's powers, though, is that she retains her full-size strength in her miniature size, and has even been shown to actually increase in strength as she shrinks. So make fun of her all you want, but Thumbelina has proved instrumental to the Mutant Liberation Front team, even being the reason their first mission was such a success.
Number 7, Strife. You know, a lot of the characters on these lists have come into contact with the character of Strife. And while most people do know how powerful Strife is, I think not including him on this far into this series is kind of a sin. So, Strife is actually a clone, created by Mother Ascani and taken by Apocalypse, a clone of Nathan Summers, whom most of you know as Cable. Strife is essentially what Cable could have been had he not been infected by the techno-organic virus that he needs to use his powers to constantly keep at bay. Without that limitation, just like Cable, Strife is an Omega level telekinetic, at least that's what he calls himself, and it's stated that he is the 3rd most powerful one on Earth. He is able to do almost all of the other things telepaths of his level are capable of, plus powerful defensive and offensive telekinetic powers. But he is also cybernetically enhanced to have superhuman physical attributes thanks to Apocalypse. Strife is an incredibly powerful villain, not to be taken lightly at all. And at number 6 is Reaper. Pantu Hurageb has some interesting abilities to say the least. When he first appeared as part of Strife's Mutant Liberation Front, Reaper had the ability to generate a paralyzing effect on others that slowed their mobility and reaction times. He would usually use his scythe as a conduit for this ability, and it could even fully paralyze victims. But later, Reaper was enhanced by the Weapon X program, who gave him cybernetic prosthetic arms that could take different shapes, although you likely won't be surprised to hear they usually took the form of scythes that would still act as a conduit for his abilities. Unfortunately, Reaper did lose his abilities on M-Day, only to regain them again and then have them drained again. So he doesn't have any powers right now, I'm pretty sure. Or they're like diluted or something, I don't know. Number 5, Dragoness. For Tamara Kurtz, she was born a mutant directly because of the nuclear fallout caused by Hiroshima that her parents were exposed to, which is a different reason than a lot of other mutants, which to me makes her more interesting. She only debuted in 1990, so she's only been around for about 30 years, but she has certainly established herself as a powerful mutant so far, displaying the ability of bioelectricity generation, kind of like an eel. No, I'm just kidding. She's not like an eel. She usually uses this electricity in electrical blasts and pyrotechnic flares, which she used as part of Strife's Mutant Liberation Front. Since her introduction, she has also been seen as a vampire, after which she died and has since been revived, so she may or may not still be a vampire as well. I have no idea. Also, for a while she was equipped with these biotechnic pair of wings, which in the House of M were actually completely organic. I'd be stoked to see her show up again in comics and maybe expanded upon. I don't feel like there are many electricity-based mutants, so it'd be kinda cool. Number 4, Slab. A lot of you liked seeing Thumbelina in part 7 of this list, but what about her brother? Chris Anderson was a member of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys, and his life before this time isn't very well known. He has abilities ability similar to his sister. Where she can decrease in size, Slab has been shown to increase in size, getting stronger and more durable as he does so. Later on, he joined the Mutant Liberation Front, and even more recently than that, he has been seen on the mutant nation of Krakoa, where he went on to join up with Sword as part of their security division. Number 3, Vincente. He isn't really the most impressive of characters, although his abilities are certainly interesting, even if he usually gets defeated. On Earth 616, Vincente was a member of M-Plate's Hellions team. He had the ability to change his body from solid, liquid, or gas forms. Now, as a gas or liquid, he has been shown to be able to mix himself in with other materials and substances. So, for example, he once mixed himself in with some soup. Or, in the Age of Apocalypse world, he became wine inside a bottle. Over time, he further developed his abilities so that in his gas form, he could now render himself poisonous if inhaled. He was defeated twice, and since the last defeat, he hasn't really appeared more. Not yet at least, so let's cross our fingers and hope he shows up. Number 2, Skids. Sally Blevins, otherwise known as Skids, has a long history in Marvel Comics, being involved with many other mutant characters and teams from Magneto and Charles Xavier to the Morlocks and Exterminators. First introduced in X-Factor number 7 in August 1986, Skid's mutant ability is to create frictionless force fields that protect her from pretty much all physical attacks, falls, energy weapons, and projections. It can also allow her to kind of skate at a bit of speed given the frictionless nature of these force fields. She can also use her force fields to extend to others if she focuses. There was one really cool moment when she protected Avalon from breaking up upon re-entry to the Earth's atmosphere with help from Jean Grey. That was really cool. So if you ever check that out, check it out. That made no sense. Whatever. Let's move on. Number 1, Wind Dancer. Sophia Mantiga was increasingly isolated at a young age, being ignored by her father, Walter Barrett, after the death of her mother and being told to not use her powers. Now, Sophia finally reached a breaking point. She entered into one of her father's grocery stores and let loose a hurricane inside of it. After she was arrested by police, Mr. Barrett was confronted by Danielle Moonstar, who saw Sophia on the news. She, persuaded him to enroll Sophia into the Xavier Institute. Sophia Mantiga has aerokinesis that she uses to amplify small vibrations in the air and draw far-off sounds to her ears. She can also disrupt the equilibrium of others with compressed air, lift herself off the ground for flight, create sharp forces of wind that can cut through material, and she even creates isolated whirlwinds or direct blasts of high-pressure air control. And she can manipulate the movement of air. But this is all before she was depowered. She has been a part of the Marauders, X Corporation, New Warriors, and New Mutants Squad.
Number 10, Blockbuster. Blockbuster might not be an A-list Bat villain, but I don't think I've ever mentioned him on this channel before, and I thought it was about time that we gave him a little shout out. We see you, Blockbuster, we see you. While not one of the most popular Bat villains, Blockbuster still packs a mighty punch. The current incarnation of the villain is Roland Desmond, who has reappeared in the Prime Earth continuity throughout the current Nightwing series. In fact, even though he started out as a detective comics, he's now actually thought of more as a Nightwing villain. Even more recently resurfacing in Nightwing in issue 83. Blockbuster has also had many incarnations throughout the years since the character's first appearance as Mark Desmond back in 1965 in Detective Comics issue 345. Some versions have been tougher and more powerful than others, but all of them have possessed some level of super strength, durability, and stamina, usually granted to them by the Blockbuster serum, and often at the cost of some intelligence. However, the current Blockbuster does not suffer the same weakness, instead simply suffering physical pain if remaining in his transformed super buff state for too long.
And a 9, Condiment King. Okay, before you yell at me, hear me out a little bit, okay? Condiment King may just seem like a random dude who uses ketchup and mustard as a weapon, but you have to admit that would not fit in the DCEU. The DCEU has a much darker tone than the Batman animated series Condiment King was created for, and if he was in the DCEU, they would have to make him incredibly deadly for it to work properly. This guy would basically just use allergies as a weapon, and I don't mean like the oh you got the sniffles and your eyes are kind of itching kind of allergies. I mean like throat closes up and eyes pop out of your head kind of allergies. They would have to turn Condiment King into such a horrific killer that he would actually end up being overpowered and probably cause a lot of controversy. Even if it was just like condiments combined with acid instead of normal condiments, that would be absolutely nuts. You thought that they handled Doomsday bad? Wait until you see people's faces melting because they got hit with Dijon honey mustard and freaking acid.
Number 8, Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is Victor Freeze, a vastly underrated Batman villain in my opinion, but admittedly a hard villain to bring to the big screen, though maybe not as as hard to bring to the big screen as Condiment King. And that's not just because of his overall look and character design, but because of how capable he can be and how powerful he is. Mr. Freeze is one of the few Batman villains who actually possesses powers and isn't just a deranged criminal. Of course, he is still a deranged criminal. Mr. Freeze in current continuity is also a deranged scientist, who from an early age seemed to have a fixation with the cold and cryogenics. This fixation likely existed because of key tragic moments that had happened when he was younger, also taking place in and around the cold, such as his father abandoning him and his mother's fatal injury and later death at his own hands. Freeze would become so obsessed he would convince himself that he was married to the subject of the first case of cryogenic stasis, despite the fact that she was technically like a lot older than him, Nora Fields. But a change to the timeline would make it so that this was actually true and that he and Nora had in fact been together before she was frozen, so she became his real wife, meaning their relationship was no longer considered one of Victor's delusions in main continuity. Mr. Freeze is not only powerful with his ice gun and unique physiology, which allows him to freeze anything he touches and create ice structures, but he is complex and unique in appearance, meaning we likely won't see him in the DCEU anytime soon. Not that I'm saying the villains aren't complex. That wasn't like a sick burn to the DCEU or anything, just to be clear.
Coming in at number 7, we have the intelligent zombie, Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy is also incredibly resilient to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by either Batman or Superman, they need to figure out a clever new way to defeat him. Solomon Grundy has always been a dependable muscle for other villains throughout the years, but it would be nice to see him take more of a starring role in an upcoming Batman story. Coming in at number 6, we have Catman. Yep, that's not a typo, there's an actual Batman villain named Catman, and we'd love to see more of him in the comics as he continues to walk the fine line between villain and anti-hero. Born under the name Thomas Blake, Catman was initially a famous lion trapper that decided a life of crime was a better use of his peak human abilities, and even based his initial costume on that of the already established villain Catwoman. However, after years of being thwarted by Batman and becoming mocked by other supervillains, Catman reformed himself after some time in the jungle into becoming an anti-hero, and was most recently seen working alongside the Suicide Squad. With all of this character development making him more than just a joke character, Catman definitely deserves to face off against Batman once more. Coming in at number 5, we have Mr. Bloom, the plant-based villain. With the ability to plant seeds within people that would grant them incredible superpowers but at the cost of their lifespan, Mr. Bloom threw Gotham into chaos during a period where Bruce Wayne was unable to be Batman and Commissioner James Gordon had instead taken up the cape and cowl. The coolest thing about Mr. Bloom wasn't just the unique look of his powers and his visual design, but how they were able to manipulate the people and villains of Gotham into a new status quo so easily. Seeing this villain have a rematch with Bruce Wayne, or even get to interact more with the similarly plant-based Poison Ivy, seems like an obvious choice for a comeback, and I can't wait to see what this villain does next. Coming in at number 4, we have Prometheus. While not an alternate reality version of Bruce Wayne like several other villains on this list, Prometheus is still a dark reflection of the Batman, given that he had to watch his criminal parents be gunned down Bonnie and Clyde style by Gotham City police forces. Waging war against law enforcement and justice of any kind, Prometheus is made all the deadlier with his helmet that allows him to download fighting skills directly into his brain. It's this deadly combo of physical prowess and ideological differences that make Prometheus one of the more interesting Bat villains, and someone who definitely needs to be featured more often.
Number 2, Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy is one of my favorite characters in the Batman universe, period. And also coincidentally one of the most powerful villains I think that currently exists in Batman's wheelhouse. She is brewing up something huge lately in the Batman comics and has threatened basically the entire world on multiple occasions, but also has sought in the past to remind people of why she strikes out as an eco-terrorist, at times working with international science communities and political meets to fight against global warming and work towards preserving important parts of our ecosystem. However, while Poison Ivy will be coming to the Arrowverse on CW, we still have yet to have a casting for her in the DCEU, and this could be because Pamela Isley is just too crazy complicated and OP to show up there. After all, she has proven before how hard she is to take on in the comics. When she took over the world, it seemed almost nothing initially, not even Batman, would be able to stop her. Number 10. Agent 13. While Sharon Carter might just be your average run-of-the-mill human on paper, in reality she is anything but your run-of-the-mill human when it comes to her capabilities. When the Secret Avengers team was brought together following the disbanding of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and Hammer, Captain America decided not to resurrect S.H.I.E.L.D., but instead create his own sub-Avengers teams to help keep the world safe. One of these teams was the Secret Avengers, and Sharon Carter was entrusted to be his kind of co-captain for it. Sharon Carter is Agent 13. Sharon was inspired to become an agent by tales that her Aunt Peggy Carter told her of her own heroics, as well as Captain America's. She joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and is considered to be among one of their best agents, being an expert in hand-to-hand combat as well as firearms. More importantly, Sharon is also a great tactician, strategist, and leader. Number 9. Goliath. Despite the fact that he died on the team, Goliath was still a powerful member. Goliath is Bill Foster, who used to work with Dr. Hank Pym as his assistant. Being a brilliant scientist himself, Foster was able to duplicate the formula for Pym particles. Exposing himself to Pym particles, he was given the ability to alter his size, turning himself into a giant. Well, at will. He could turn himself into a giant and then shrink back down. Hence the name Goliath. Safely, Foster could grow to 25 feet in height. His increase in size also gave him a great increase in strength and somewhat in durability due to his change in mass. The formula also allows his body to change so that it can actually support the weight of his new and larger form while he is transformed. However, Goliath was vulnerable if he changed sizes multiple times in a shorter period, as it left him weakened somewhat and exhausted temporarily. It's hard on the body, basically. He died during his time serving on the Secret Avengers during the first Civil War, which was actually the first Secret Avengers team, but not the first volume of Secret Avengers, to be clear. To some, his death only strengthened their conviction for the cause, and to others, it acted as a warning to basically leave the team. And gave them a signal that actually what they were doing maybe it wasn't a good idea. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about other sub-Avengers teams or more about the Secret Avengers, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There's still lots of powerful members that I haven't talked about yet, so we could probably do a part 2 for this one. Number 8. Ant-Man. Ant-Man for the purpose of this list is actually Eric O'Grady, not Hank Pym or Scott Lang. During the Secret Avengers run that Ant-Man was a part of, the mantle was being held by Eric. If you thought Scott's past and thieving actions were questionable, Eric basically puts him to shame. Eric is probably the baddest of the Ant-Men in terms of his morals, although I think all Ant-Men have made some morally questionable choices in their life. Still, O'Grady really takes the cake overall. Eric O'Grady is more commonly known as the Irredeemable Ant-Man, which was the name of his Ant-Man series, which really gives you an idea of what type of character he is. However, Eric had decided to turn over a new leaf and really try to make a difference in the world and become a hero, which was what motivated him to accept a position on the Secret Avengers team. Although to be clear, up to this point he was still a hero, he just was kind of like a very morally corrupt hero. He possesses the Ant-Man suit, which gives him his powers, allowing him to change size, shrinking down, and later growing in size as well. He can also communicate with and command insects. He can also, I think, do some cool energy blasty stuff. So he's pretty powerful. But still, it's Eric O'Grady. It's not like Hank Ant-Man. I think those are two different levels. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which was what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he is really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed. But the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Valkyrie. Brunhilde is Valkyrie, or at least she was Valkyrie. Now there's another Valkyrie, and actually there's kind of like other Valkyries, multiple Valkyries, but I digress. Brunhilde is also Valkyrie in the comics. She ended up joining the Secret Avengers after her apparent death during the Fear Itself event. As a character, she dies quite a bit to be honest, but she usually gets to return, which is awesome. As an Asgardian, Brunhilde has powers that come from just being of Asgard. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, has slowed aging and an increased lifespan, and of course she can self-heal. Although as I said, that doesn't always save her from dying, which happens. Number 2. Captain America. Probably one of the most important members of the Secret Avengers team at almost all times is Captain America. Captain America was the founder of the team the first time around and formed it to help fight back against Iron Man and the Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. It was called Secret Avengers because of the fact that the team had to be kept secret. Otherwise they would have been taken away and imprisoned due to the SRA or the SHRA. I don't know if superhuman, if those are their own letters or not. Captain America is a super soldier, a strong and motivational leader who also has super strength, speed, agility, speed, I said speed twice, but he's really speedy, I guess, and endurance, all thanks to him being exposed to the super soldier serum years ago in World War II. So he's not just super valuable as a leader, but he's also super powerful in general. Also, he's Captain freaking America. That's just having that name. I feel like if you're Captain America already, you get some kind of power level just from people being like, oh, it's Captain America. Number 1, Nova. Nova is Richard Rider. He basically came on to act as a Secret Avengers powerhouse when Captain America originally banded this team together after Hammer was disbanded, which I think means he gets our top spot by default. Also, Nova is just insanely powerful due to him being the host of the Nova Force. He only ended up sticking around for the first arc of the first Secret Avengers series volume, as he had to go do some cosmic stuff and he was pulled away, but he was still a member for a time, so we can still count him. Nova is insanely strong, fast, durable, can self-heal, can fly, also having the ability to fly through space, and he's super smart, as he has access to the Xandarian world mind, basically giving him access to all the knowledge of Xandar. So yeah, he's got it all, baby. He's got the strength, he's got the wits, he's got that sweet look in his awesome suit with his awesome helmet. He's got it all, except he doesn't have the time to be on the Secret Avengers for too long. That's what he doesn't have. He lacks time.
Number 10. The Dummy. The Dummy was created in the 1940s and has faced Superman countless times. Now, he isn't just strictly a Superman villain, he has faced other superheroes as well. He's quite intelligent and uses a gun quite a bit. Not much else is known about his backstory, since it was never really revealed if he was actually a literal ventriloquist dummy or just something else. Yeah, that's how we got this Man of Sand. See what I did there? He is quite the powerful foe, and if they are close, he can drain the Man of Steel's powers. The other crazy thing about how these two are linked is that the planet will blow up if they have any physical contact, since he can drain and consume Superman's powers. He even sort of turned good, wanting to save lives, instead of hurting them. Number 6. Mr. Zed. Mr. Zed is immortal and quite fascinated with famous people. So what he likes to do is travel, through time to capture famous people and his crystal, and that is on top of his cane, basically capturing their souls. He also has the power of hypnotizing people and resurrection. Of course, he became fascinated with Superman. When attempting to try and capture Superman into his crystal, he is unsuccessful due to where he came from and how powerful the Man of Steel is. In the end, his crystal explodes, freeing most of the souls that he captured throughout time. He has faced off with him other times as well, whether it was in the past or the present day version of himself. Number 5. Master Jailer. The Master Jailer, aka Deathtrap, worked for Star Labs in creating cells for superpowered individuals. He is incredibly smart and was asked to try and figure out a way to hold Superman in the cell, but proved he couldn't do it. That didn't stop his obsession with trying to figure out how he could one day trap the Man of Steel in one of his cells, though. He found out Superman's identity, Clark Kent, and wanted to try and go after his friends as a way to get him to cooperate. He also teamed up with some of Superman's longtime foes, but he was never able to fully capture the Man of Steel like he always wanted.
Number 4. Lois Lane Robot. On New Earth and during his quest for the power he lost in Blackest Night, Lex Luthor decided it was a good idea to take a Brainiac probe stored in LexCorp and a sample of Lois Lane's DNA to create a robotic version of her that would serve as his quote-unquote conscience. Unfortunately for him, before he was able to complete the programming, he was held hostage by some bandits under the control of Mr. Mind, and he himself was put into a mental illusion. The Lois Lane robot was functional enough though to activate all of its weapon systems, allowing it to take out all of the thugs and bring Luthor back into reality. Armed to the brim with state-of-the-art technology and weapons, her robotic android body allows her to repair any damage received, and also gives her the ability to fly alongside super strength, durability, and speed. Now, not long after their run-in with Mr. Mind, Luthor, Deathstroke, and Lanebot head to Antarctica to find a black orb that is somehow related to the Black Power Ring energy. The effects of this orb were enough to cause Deathstroke and his men to completely lose control and attack one another. However, Lanebot was not affected as she is inorganic. That was the last time we saw the Lois Lane robot, so until they grace the comic book pages once again, check them out in their first appearance in 2010's Action Comics number 890.
Number 3. Cancer. This is definitely an interesting villain, and one for sure I definitely had not heard of at all. So somewhere down the line, Superman developed cancerous cells. When they removed the actual cells from Superman's body, what do? What do you know? We got our villain Cancer. Yes, he came to life from the removal of these cancerous cells in Superman's body. Since he came from Superman, he has most of Superman's powers, as well as being able to completely destroy a human body with just a touch from him. Since he is connected to Superman, he has weird issues about him being his father or whatnot. So, it's a little bit strange. Number 2, Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace was created in the 1980s and has the power of mind control, and with that power, she can manipulate others. Amazing Grace works with a villain known as Darkseid as his agent. So she basically lives amongst the people of Apokolips and tries to root out who are the most unloyal to him and who would betray him in an instance. She finds these people and basically betrays them once they show their true colors. She has done this with Superman in a sense, by luring him in to save her when really she did not need saving at all. It was just a ploy to manipulate him and to make him believe that he was Darkseid's son, which he actually believed. In the end, Orion, Darkseid's true son, who they were waging war on, used the Mother Box to give Superman his mind back.
And now, number 1, Za-Vam the Invincible. This dude appeared in Action Comics 351 in 1967. Za-Vam was created by the god of Olympus after they looked into the future and saw Superman, believing him to be a rival god. Za-Vam was built from clay and sent off to defeat the Man of Steel. Using godlike powers making him seemingly unstoppable, he becomes the leader of the United Crime Syndicate and humbles Superman. Superman is only able to finally defeat Za-Vam after collecting a magical belt from another group of gods led by Neptune. Za-Vam's name is an anagram in reference to the godlike powers he possesses, including Zeus, Hercules, Achilles, and others. He has not reappeared since his defeat, but it would be nice.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Bruce Wayne Jr. Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. In issue 89, we see the front cover and it's Lois Lane marrying Bruce Wayne. It rhymes, so you know it's a good one. And then to the left, we see Superman and he's just thrilled. He's awesome. He's glad to be there. So we haven't upset Lois Lane right off the hop. She's pissed at Superman because he keeps going on these secret missions with Wonder Woman. And then on the same page mind you, just a little bit lower, it shows her with Bruce Wayne and she's loving it. She's like, damn, Bruce is attractive. What? She's like on his shoulders, they're wakeboarding in the sunset. It's beautiful. So naturally they have a baby. I mean, come on, Bruce rocking the green Speedo. Obviously. I love this issue. Superman is like, hey dude, no sweat. You actually have my blessing. Go for it. You got it. Then the next panel, he's like, oh, I blew it. Shit. It's so good. The baby, of course, being Bruce Wayne Jr. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up, because every time you do, somebody here grabs my shoulder and says, good job. And then I smile for hours, so help me smile. Plus it helps us here at the studio too. Awesome, thanks. Okay, over to Huntress.
Coming in at number 9, we have Shane Johns, the son of Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl from an alternate future. While attempting to find a way to prevent Lex Luthor from unleashing the Dark Goddess Perpetua, the Justice League found themselves traveling through a 6-dimensional doorway to a future where the forces of good had seemingly finally won their constant battle with the forces of evil. All of the members of the Justice League seemed to have found happiness, especially Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter, who had an ambitious young son named Shane. Unfortunately, this reality turned out to all be a ruse by the World Forger, but in a weird twist, Shane still decided to ally himself with the real Justice League, and used his incredibly strong psychic abilities to help save the day. That'll do, kid. That'll do.
Number 8, Damian Wayne. The son of Batman and Talia al Ghul made his debut back in Batman, Son of the Demon in 1987. And he was perfect. I mean, genetically speaking, he was perfect. He was born from an artificial womb and he was supposed to join the League of Assassins and be a great warrior. That was his life, just laid out. There you go. Which doesn't sound like a bad itinerary. Having a powerful skill set in martial arts before he was even a teenager, Talia al Ghul explained who he was and then left him with his father, Batman. I mean, she was hoping that this would cause problems for Bruce, and then that this would disrupt Batman's work. You know, getting a little one to spy on Batman, stir up some shit with Tim Drake. He was actually quite eager to replace Tim Drake as Batman's wingman, so troubled Damian Wayne grabs another Robin costume, added some cool League of Assassins gear, and then takes out the villain Spook. Does he arrest him? Report his Instagram? No. He actually cuts his head right off his body, so that's certainly one way of serving up justice. Guy's wild. At one point, he even ended up sucker punching Tim Drake off of a T-Rex model, not a real T-Rex. Don't worry. And of course, after Batman R.I.P. and Batman Battle for the Cowl, he becomes the 5th Robin. Number 7, Thomas Taylor Wayne. Wow, what a great middle name. Best name ever, I heard. I don't know. Wild. Thomas Taylor Wayne is the son of Batman and Supergirl, Lara Wayne. In Superman and Batman Generation 3, he was born in the year 2626. And spoiler alert, he dies in 2724. In this generation's imaginary series by John Byrne, we see Thomas Wayne's parents as immortal. which is always a nice time, meaning that Laura is Bruce's great-granddaughter by adoption, and Thomas is both Bruce's son and great-grandson. Huh.
Wow.
Number 6, Ibn al-Zufash. Definitely messed up that name, but we're doing our best here. It translates to Son of the Bat. Making his first appearance in Kingdom Come issue 2, Mark Waid and Alex Ross did such a good job. The artwork is absolutely stunning in this epic series. Ibn is the son of Batman and Talia al Ghul. See, Talia kept Ibn as a secret from the Dark Knight. Then later on in life, he basically had to choose what kind of lifestyle he wanted for himself. You know, either go the way of his grandfather, Ra's al Ghul, or follow the steps of his father, Batman. Now, of course, he chose the Bat and took his own grandfather down. That a boy, nice. One time I told my family my grandpa was smoking inside, and then I got grounded. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Glad it worked well for him. Awesome. Ibn played a little differently though. I mean, he used his grandfather's resources to do good. He eventually winds up falling in love with Nightstar, daughter of Dick Grayson, and Starfire.
Number 5, Joel Kent. Joel Kent comes to us from Earth 3839. There he was the son of Superman and Lois Lane. However, while Lois was pregnant with Joel, she was exposed to gold kryptonite by the villains Joker and Lex Luthor. This caused her son to be born without any powers. Lex used Joel's shame to his advantage, claiming that Joel's father was the one responsible for this. Lex said that Superman had exposed his unborn son to gold kryptonite on purpose, fearful that his son would become even more great than him. This seeming revelation caused Joel to become more detached from his family, thinking of Lex as more of a father than his own father. He also became more cruel over time. Eventually, he became a villain to his family, accepting a serum that Lex said would restore his powers.
Number 4, Bruce Wayne Jr. Coming straight from one of the most wild comic book issues ever, we have Batman and Captain America. That's right, back in 1977, we see Bruce Wayne Jr., the son of Batman, and, well, we don't really know who the mother is. I'm sure she's great though, I'm sure she's awesome. His uncle, being that of Dick Grayson, was always admired by Bruce Wayne Jr. I mean, of course, look at him, I admire him, I didn't even know this guy. As a child, he would dress up in his uncle's Robin suit and do some at-home workouts. Punch, punch, kick, kick, bam, you know? The good stuff, some Zumba fitness, you know, getting a feel for the suit, which personally, I wouldn't take that suit off if I had access to it. That thing would stink all the time, gross. So by the time he was 18, he actually worked alongside the new Batman, Dick Grayson. Then after the passing of Batman, Bruce Wayne Jr. swapped outfits and stepped in to take over as Batman. So sick. It's kind of like in Santa Claus when Tim Allen puts on the suit. It's go time. Also, this issue has the smoothest transition when Captain America first shows up. It goes from Batman and Robin jumping out of the way from a bomb, and then cuts to Cap in an explosion with him, like the same kind of fire. Little details like that just capture me. So good. So good. Number 3, Terry McGinnis. Alright, imagine you're going for your flu shot, and then it turns out it's actually not a flu shot, and it's actually Bruce Wayne's DNA. I mean, after I got the flu, I would have some questions, that's for sure. And I can like chop people in necks. Like, what's going on here? I feel sick, but I'm great at backflips. Project Cadmus director Amanda Waller was out looking for an eventual replacement for Batsy. So she figured she'd get started on Project Batman Beyond. And the key, well, Batman's blood samples left over from his altercations. That mixed in with some nanotech solutions, bam, we have the DNA of Bruce Wayne. So she was out looking for the perfect couple to, you know, force this life onto, and then found that the McGinnis household was perfect. So Warren McGinnis goes for a flu shot, and then he doesn't even know he's soon going to be the father of a biological Bruce Wayne. Surprise, it's a boy. No, for sure, it's a boy, trust me.
Coming in at number 2, we have Hyperman, a distant future version of the potential son of the Man of Steel. In the same reality where the storyline Kingdom Come took place, the young son of this reality Superman, Jonathan Kent, was kidnapped by the villain known as Gog and encased first in a prison of kryptonite and then trapped within the weird branch of reality known as Hypertime. Luckily, someone was there to watch over the infant, his own future self, a hero known as Hyperman that was destined to become even greater than Superman. The baby was eventually able to be saved through the joint efforts of the Kingdom Come universe and the main DC universe's heroes, and the Kingdom Come parents of this child are now determined to make sure that Hyperman's bright future becomes a reality.
And finally, number 1, Bruce Wayne Jr. We go over now to the 1965 version of Bruce Wayne Jr. making his debut in World's Finest issue 154. He's the son of Catherine Kane and Bruce Wayne Sr. He's part of the badass duo referred referred to as the Super Sons, and that name is pretty perfect for the gang. Cited by Superman Jr., the two would grow up together. And the opening of the issue shows them both reading about their fathers and their super achievements. It's really cute. They even get married on the same day. It's wild. Bad boys for life. My favorite part though is seeing the two interact with Superman Jr.'s powers. There's one point where Superman Jr. wouldn't let Batman Jr. down from a teeter-totter. He said, "I won't let you down until you admit my dad has caught more crooks than your dad." The classic "my dad can totally beat your dad up" scenario. The Super Sons eventually figured out their existence was a sham, and they were just a computer simulation all along. But aren't we all in a simulation?
Coming in right at number 10 is Richter. Julio Richter has a pretty interesting mutant power. Richter can manipulate various aspects of the planet itself. Originally, his powers manifested in simple seismic energy, allowing him to create earthquakes, shock waves, and rudimentary transport of Earth matter. However, after Richter's powers evolved, he now has the ability to remotely terraform the ground around him in a much more precise manner. He can toss rocks around with precision or will the ground to open up like a tunnel. But he also has some skill with plants, controlling vines and other plants to ensnare his opponents. Julio also gained magma kinesis after being trapped under an active volcano and just rising out of it, riding on top of the magma like an absolute badass. More impressive than that though is that Richter's powers have created a psychic / empathic bond between himself and the primal life force of Earth's biosphere, allowing him some clairvoyance and mysticism. Definitely one of the coolest characters I have never heard of. I just wanted to pause here to say if you're enjoying this list so far, dropping a like is all you have to do to help us out and let us know that this is what you want to see. And on that note, we're gonna get to number 9, who is Gorgeous George. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and when I behold George Blair, gorgeous is not the word that comes to mind, but nonetheless that is the name he holds. Gorgeous George's body is composed of this tar or putty-like stuff that through his thoughts can be expanded, morphed, and reshaped in any way he wants. Using this ability, he has been able to turn his entire body into a puddle or make himself extremely slippery to avoid capture. Side note, becoming extra slippery just makes me like ick, you know? I don't like that slipperiness. George is also very hard to injure. He can reconstitute parts of his body and can even bend to dodge attacks. The slippery thing also kind of helps with this as well. He has also once tried to choke Strong Guy by using his powers to enter his lungs, which is just a terrifying thought. On a lighter note though, his arms are actually longer than normal because he forgot their normal length after getting drunk with other members of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys. Well, that's kind of cool. And at number 8 is Pyro. St. John Allardyce is an Australian pyrokinetic mutant. He has the ability to control flame to grow in size and intensity and to even take on any form he desires. He has used flame to create almost solid creations he refers to as, quote, the living flame, which have been in the shape of gigantic claws, birds, or even golems. The size, power, and intensity of the fire beings Pyro created were limited only by the extent of his imagination, the degree of his concentration, and his force of will. The only problem for Pyro is that he cannot generate flames spontaneously. He needs a source, which has been flamethrowers in his costume, other allies like Lockheed, or like a lighter or something. He could also be burnt by any fire that wasn't under his direct control. Now, he used his abilities mainly for evil deeds and crimes, but since his resurrection on Krakoa after he died due to the legacy virus, he has gone on to join Kate Pryde's Marauders and got this crazy skull tattoo on his face. It's kind of cool, but also I wouldn't do it, but you know, whatever. Number 7 is Strong Guy. I kind of can't believe I haven't talked about Guido Carosella yet. Despite this guy's massive hulking appearance, he is one of the most entertaining mutants around. Essentially, Guido, who goes by the name Strong Guy, has the ability to absorb kinetic energy and use it to enhance his physical strength. Now, at a base level, he can lift around 50 tons, which is already more than a lot of superpowered beings. But using his kinetic absorption, he can boost that strength strength up to far above 100 tons, making him one of the strongest characters in Marvel Comics. Unfortunately, Guido's body suffers from his mutation. Storing the kinetic energy he absorbs for more than 90 seconds will permanently distort his body in very painful ways. The distortions he's already suffering from cause him to be in constant pain, which, being the great guy he is, pushed him towards being absolutely hilarious to hide his pain. Hey y'all, if you love the manga, if you love the anime, well then make sure to check out Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. James is an awesome host bringing you videos just like this one, but with that manga and anime setting. You should definitely check it out. And coming off of that, number 6 is Layla Miller. Of all the mutant powers I've come across, resurrection is one that doesn't actually happen too often. But Layla's resurrection ability is an interesting one. It comes with a major side note. Layla has the ability to resurrect dead beings, restoring their bodies and their consciousness, but not their soul. Without their soul, the resurrected being will have no conscience or morality. We saw this happen both with Strong Guy and Trevor Fitzroy, who were resurrected by Layla, who eventually experienced drastic changes in their personality without their souls. Another key factor about this resurrection is that it can only be performed within minutes of the individual's death. Layla claims she can also reverse this process, taking back the life that she gives. Another interesting note for Layla is that during the House of M, Layla was resistant to Wanda's reality warping abilities and retained all of her memories. She could even give others back their memories. She's also been to the future and studied magic with Dr. Doom, so like, that's cool as well. Coming in at number 5 is M. Just the letter M. Monet St. Croix has an interesting past, and honestly, her family is a big part of that. Her brother is an incredibly powerful bad dude who trapped her in a different form where she is known as Penance. As Penance, she has diamond skin, a telepathic resistance, and super sharp claws. M can even combine with her younger siblings Claudette and Nicole, but on her own, Monet is essentially a near perfect being. All of her physical and mental skills are greater than the natural physical limits of peak humans, granting her super strength, speed, agility, stamina, senses, intuition, and a genius level intellect, as well as reflexes that even allow her to catch bullets. She can fly at supersonic speeds by sheer force of will, she can read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and defensively mask her mind against telepathic intrusion, and she has even displayed some telekinesis. And on top of all that, she has the power of being ridiculously good looking. Lucky. Number 4, Marius St. Croix. I could talk about Monet St. Croix for a long time, but her brother, he is just terrifying and needs to be discussed. Marius, who eventually goes by the name Emplate, has the ability to siphon mutant energy by feeding on the bone marrow of mutants using his super creepy feeder mouths that appear on the palms of his hands. Emplate needs the energy from mutants in order to survive, almost like a mutant vampire. And like a vampire, if Marius siphons all of a person's energy, his victims will pass away. Also like a vampire, if Emplate drains only part of a victim's energy, he can gain a kind of psychic control over their mind, and can cause the mutant to become an energy vampire just like him, but under his control. Kind of like a vampire's familiar. Interestingly, when feeding from a victim, he actually cancels out their powers and copies them for himself. After multiple feedings, he even gains their power permanently, like he did with Penance's diamond skin. And at number 3 is Chamber. Chamber, or Jonathan Evans Starsmore, discovered his powers when a blast of psionic energy burst from his torso, destroying much of his chest and his face. It turns out that Chamber is actually literally composed of that same psionic energy, and his body just acts as a shell for it. When his powers burst out of him, the wound was replaced by a constant glow of psionic fire, leaving him unable to speak. Instead, he can only communicate telepathically. Additionally, he does not eat, drink, or even breathe, as he has no organs. Chamber constantly created and unleashed psionic charges of energy that could strike with a volatile force, being projected as a blast from his chest, a series of guided streams that struck specific targets, or as a massive eruption striking in all directions. Now, if he was given the time to train properly, Chamber could have potentially been one of the most powerful mutants to walk the earth, but unfortunately he's not. Number 2, Mikhail Rasputin. As the older brother of both Colossus and Magik, Mikhail Rasputin Rasputin has quite the mutant genealogy, and he ain't no chump himself. Mikhail is an alpha-level mutant with the ability to manipulate subatomic matter and warp energy. His power hasn't really been properly defined, but he could forcibly fuse a man to a tree and could manipulate Bobby Drake, Iceman's body. Speaking of Iceman, Mikhail also seemed to display some form of enhanced perception, being able to see Bobby's potential just by looking at him, and he could show him how to use his powers in better ways. Mikhail has also used his power to fire energy blasts, tamper with people's powers, and most prominently for teleportation. He could transport himself as well as others by opening up dimensional portals by ripping away at the subatomic wall of space, which he did when the Soviets sent him into space and blew up his ship. Sorry. And coming in at number 1 is Sienna Blaze. Sienna Blaze has incredibly strong destructive abilities thanks to the fact that Sienna can disrupt a planet's electromagnetic energy spectrum, absorbing the energy into her body and then releasing it, usually in destructive blasts. Sienna's released energy would tear a hole in the local electromagnetic field, which is bad, in case you wondered, with repeated use of her power theoretically being able to destroy the planet. She can also use the magnetic energy to fly at 150 miles per hour, or impressively to teleport herself along the planet's electromagnetic field. Again, every time she teleports, she permanently damages the electromagnetic field at the point of departure, causing a pretty strong explosion. As an example, Sienna shot down the X-Men's Blackbird in Antarctica. Sienna then ambushed Cyclops and Storm and nearly completely took them out until Professor X prevented her from using her powers. Then Storm, Cyclops, and Professor X managed to defeat Sienna, except she just teleported away and left a massive explosion in her stead.
Coming in at number 10, we have Damian Wayne, the son of Batman. Genetically engineered and grown in an artificial womb following a night of passion between Talia al Ghul and Bruce Wayne, Damian was intended by the villain Ra's al Ghul to be his ultimate successor as the ruler of the League of Shadows. Trained to be an assassin from an incredibly young age, Batman wasn't even aware he had a son until the boy was 10 years old and left in his care by Talia. And while initially the father and son combo had some issues sorting out their issues and Damian's stance on Batman's whole no killing rule, Damian has since become an important member of the Bat family as the 5th Robin and continues to be an essential ally of Batman to this day.
Number 10, Sir-El. Sir-El originally believed she was Kal-El's daughter. She told Superman as much, believing she was the daughter of him and Lois Lane from the future. A genetic test would reveal that she was telling the truth in part, and genetically was Superman's daughter. In reality, it would later be revealed that she was actually created by Brainiac to bring about the end of the world. He created her using Superman's genetic material and implanted her with the Yes virus, a techno-organic virus that when unleashed would allow him to rule the world. She was also designed to be strong enough to defeat Superman. Brainiac had also intended to use Sir-El to destroy his nemesis. Once she learned of this, she decided to erase herself from existence in order to protect the world and her pseudo-father, Superman.
Coming in at number 8, we have Cube, Cyborg's son from a dark possible future. Hailing from a world where a force known as the Darkness has threatened to corrupt all of the Earth's heroes, Cube's real name is George Marvin Stone. The son of Cyborg, Cube is literally a human mother box, connected down at the DNA level to one of the most iconic objects in the entire DC universe. Because of this complete integration with alien technology, Cube is able to perform all of the tech-based powers that his father has, alongside being capable of generating his own teleporting boom tubes whenever he wants. With all of those powers combined, Cube is definitely a cyborg you don't want to mess with. Coming in at number 7, we have Zod, the born-in-a-lab spawn of an evil Superman and Wonder Woman from the world of the Justice Lords. Named after one of Superman's most iconic villains, this Zod was born on a world where Superman turned to the dark side and turned the Justice League into the Justice Lords following the death of their universe's Flash. Unfortunately, following the birth of Zod, the baby was kidnapped by a Brainiac from another universe and locked away in the Phantom Zone, which is probably the least ideal place possible to raise a child. With both Kryptonian and Amazonian blood flowing through his veins, Zod was beyond dangerous even if he just remained a little kid. Coming in at number 6, we have Nightwing, the adopted son of Batman and the very first Robin. While not biologically a child of the Justice League, Dick Grayson has been by Batman's side since nearly the very beginning, essentially adopted by Bruce Wayne following the death of his circus performer parents, and becoming the very first Robin, the Boy Wonder. Since then, Dick Grayson has accomplished a lot, helping found the Teen Titans, establishing his own superhero identity as Nightwing, and even briefly taking over the position of Batman on a few occasions where Bruce Wayne was incapable of performing the role. No matter what the future of the DC Universe brings, Nightwing will always be an incredible fan favorite.
Number 5, Damian Wayne. Brave and the Bold edition. There we are. Damian Wayne is the son of Bruce and Catwoman, but this time in the Knights of Tomorrow, where he's voiced by Patrick Kavanagh and Diedrich Bader. So while Bruce was looking at baby Wayne, Bruce realized that his son would one day have to take on crime lords. That's so funny to me. Like, superhero context aside, just looking at a baby and being like, oh yeah, you're gonna punch like 900 people in the throat one day. I can see it. It's amazing. After witnessing the death of his parents, he grabbed one of the 2 Robin outfits on display at the Batman Museum, and Bob's your uncle. You know the rest.
Coming in at number 4, we have Hunter Prince, the potential future son of Wonder Woman. In the same dark future that Cyborg's son Cube hailed from, Wonder Woman was one of the first heroes to be infected by the darkness, giving birth to a son that could become an even more powerful vessel for the villain. Wonder Woman gave the boy up to Superman and Lois Lane, hoping that they would be able to prevent her son from going to the dark side, but unfortunately, Hunter believed his mother was giving him up because he was male, as was Amazonian custom. Growing up angry at the previous generation that had failed him, Hunter possessed all of the strengths of Wonder Woman, including her lasso of truth and bracelets of submission, making him a truly powerful and angry enemy. Coming in at number 3, we have 2 for the price of 1 with the Tornado Twins, the potential villainous children of the Flash. Born in the 30th century when Barry Allen had briefly retired there with Iris West, these versions of the twins grew up without a father, as Barry was believed to be dead and never returned to that timeline following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Filling the place of Barry in his absence was unfortunately the Reverse Flash, a villain dead set on ruining Barry's life and creations in any way possible, and turning Barry's twin children into supervillains was right up his evil alley. Having since become members of the Legion of Zoom, a collective of speed-based villains, Dawn and Dawn Allen have the full power of the Speed Force at their disposal, making them incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous.
Number 2, Hyperman. Hyperman is the son of Wonder Woman and Superman from the Kingdom Come reality. Here, Hyperman, as a baby, was raised by Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. However, he was then later stolen away by a villain named Gog, who intended to raise the infant to become a villain. Fortunately, the present day and alternate Kingdom Come future counterparts of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman managed to team up to defeat Gog with the added babysitting assistance of Baby John himself from the future, where he is revealed to be the hero known as Hyperman. Hyperman ends up being a hero who has the combined powers of both of his parents and also has the ability to time travel.
And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have John Kent, the true son of Superman. Half Kryptonian and half human, John Kent was the most recent hero to take up the mantle of Superboy, using everything he'd learned from his parents, Clark Kent and Lois Lane, to be an inspiring force for the people of Earth. Aging quicker than usual due to weird time travel and reality hopping hijinks, John Kent has since become the new Superman, taking over his father's position as the defender of truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, and trying to find his own place in the growing DC Omniverse. And to make things even more interesting, Batman has even theorized after examining John's DNA that the unique combination of human and Kryptonian genetics in his blood might mean that he could surpass even his own father when it comes to power once he's fully grown. All of this is to say that John Kent is, in my opinion, the most powerful son of the Justice League.
Number 10, Microwave Man. Also known as Louis Paget, we meet this villain in Action Comics number 487 in 1978. A space traveler, he returned to Earth after 40 years of flying through the stars aboard an alien spacecraft. Before he began his journey, he he was already the costumed villain Microwave Man. Upon returning to Earth, he calls on his alien friends to grant him his youth back, but it comes at a cost. His life will be shortened to just a few hours. He says, yeah, I'm good with that. He just wants the opportunity to defeat Superman. So Superman agrees and even allows Microwave Man to defeat him in a test of strength. Lewis dies satisfied and the aliens claim his body and they set him adrift in space. It's a touching story in which the villain is dispatched within 2 issues, meaning we will probably never see him again. It's nice though. Hey gang, before we hit number 9, I really need you guys to hit that like button. It's not required, I will continue with the list either way, but we do appreciate it. Number 9, Sand Superman. First appearing in Superman 233 in 1971, Sand Superman is exactly what he sounds like. Created from a portal between Earth and the Quorum dimension, Sand Superman just wants to drain Superman of all his power and knowledge. However, as it gains energy, he also gains the desire to act like Superman, including serving unselfishly as a superhero. Unfortunately, Superman can't really take him on as a sidekick or anything like that for 2 reasons. 1, Sand Superman only gains power by taking it away from Superman. And 2, if they were to actually touch each other ever, Sand Superman's alternatively charged atoms would just result in a huge explosion big enough to destroy the entire planet. Sand Superman's story was really not all that lengthy, so it's pretty easy to see why he hasn't returned. Coming in at number 8, J. Wilbur Wolfenham. He would call himself a business consultant or philanthropist, but make no mistake, he is a con man. Mr. Wolfenham first appeared in Superman 341 and was erased from existence following the collapse of the multiverse during the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. In his debut, he has a scheme to sell amulets which allegedly teleport the wearer to safety if a disaster strikes. Superman comes along and decides to put this product to the test. This all happens in a story called The Man Who Could Cancel Catastrophe. In another story called Sale of the Century, Wilbur thinks he's pulled off a master scam by selling the Earth off to an alien real estate agent until the alien actually comes back, and then of course Superman has to come straighten everything out. This guy is seriously a real piece of work, but we haven't seen him again since 1985. Coming in at number 7, Funny Face. We meet Funny Face in Superman 19 in 1942. Making him possibly the oldest villain on this list. In his story, Case of the Funny Paper Crimes, he brings some villains to life from a comic strip, including Machine Gun Mike and the Black Raider, and he sends these guys out to rob the stores of Metropolis in a super dastardly evil scheme. Just go out there and rob everything, you guys. Superman takes them on one at a time, eventually figuring out what's going on and that they've come from the Funny Pages. While Superman is busy, Funny Face kidnaps Lois Lane and transforms her from a real person into a comic book character. Superman forms up a team with some other comic strip heroes that have been brought to life, and together they rescue Lois and take down the villains. This guy last appeared in 1986, and I seriously hope we see him again. He's crazy looking. Oh man. Number 6, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Jeez, is that an L in there? Anyway, the name is intended to be unpronounceable. We'll just call him Mixie. First appearing in Superman Volume 2 in 1987, Mixie is an imp from the 5th dimension who periodically visits and gives Superman a hard time. He first appears as a dashing young man by the name of Ben DeRoy and convinces Lois Lane to marry him. Superman eventually puts 2 and 2 together, and the imp agrees to go back home if Superman can get him to type, spell, or say his name backwards. Not Superman's name, but the other guy's crazy name. So, this evil, nefarious dude, he creates a giant typewriter and he makes up a name on the spot, choosing the name I mentioned earlier, figuring, oh, this is gonna be impossible for Superman. Superman defiantly says something along the lines of, you couldn't even type that name forwards. And so Mixie does it and demonstrates, not realizing Superman has already rewired the typewriter, causing Mixie to write his own name backwards, vanishing himself. He once even tried to do nice things, granting people's wishes, but not in the right way. For example, a woman wishes that her dough would finally rise, and it fills her entire home, pouring out onto the street. Another scene has a bunch of people wishing they had a Riverview apartment, so he makes their building sprout legs and literally walk over to the river. This villain did appear in 2008, but I think he still counts as forgotten. And honestly, he's too bizarre for me not to mention. Number 5, Black Rock. First appearing in Justice League America number 43 in 1990, Peter Silverstone was an American scientist, the director of research and technology for the United Broadcasting Company. His task was to create a corporate-backed superhero that the UBC could provide exclusive coverage of. He creates a suit that gives the wearer power over broadcasting frequencies. The suit is powered by a mysterious sentient black stone. Silverstone manipulated his boss and his nephew into wearing the suit before he finally tries it on for himself. Sad to say though, after years and years of butting heads with Superman and losing, he becomes a washed up, failed villain who hangs out with guys like Kite Man. Eventually, he is driven mad by overuse of the Black Stone powers and winds up getting killed by Sam Benjamin, who then steals the stone and becomes the new Black Rock. Number 4, the prankster. Oswald Loomis first appeared in 1988, the popular host of The Uncle Oswald Show, an early morning children's program. When ratings for his show plummeted and it was cancelled, Oswald totally lost it and went on a pranking spree terrorizing Metropolis. He once even held Lois Lane hostage and tried to marry her. Later in life, he sells his soul to Lord Satanus, and this changes him, making him young and athletic. He is a manic trickster who uses futuristic technology to create gadgets and weapons, all while retaining a comical theme. This guy doesn't come up as often as other practical joke inspired villains such as Joker and the Riddler, so we haven't seen him for a bit. Number 3, Terra Man. When DC Comics rebooted everything with the New 52 in 2011, this guy was recreated to better suit a modern audience. But in 1972, he first appeared in Superman 249 as Tobias Manning, a desperado cowboy sent into the future. When he was young, he encountered an alien during his first holdup, while his father was recovering from a gunshot wound. The alien decides to take the boy and raise him for himself, taking him off into space and teaching him how to handle futuristic weapons. The alien, known as the Collector, also gave Toby a winged horse named Nova, which became his steed. He calls himself Terra Man and travels with the Collector, robbing and plundering all through space until his memories return, and one day he kills the Collector to avenge his father. He then travels to Earth, where he continues acting like a cowboy and performing nefarious evil deeds. He has some hilarious Western-themed gadgets, including an energy lasso and a chewing tobacco capable of aging Superman. Number 2, Dragoran. First appearing in 1971, Dragoran is the man from Transylvania. Transylvania is a miniature planet Superman visits with his friend Jimmy Olsen in Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, Volume 1. Man, wouldn't it be nice to be Superman's pal? He's literally just a vampire. We think the writers might have been phoning it in a bit on this one. Throughout the story, Superman and Jimmy encounter not only Dragoran, but a werewolf too. I really wish I had more to tell you about this guy, but there is a reason that he's a forgotten villain.
Number 1, Super Menace. Super Menace is definitely one of the most out there villains that you probably haven't heard of. The origin of Super Menace is that when Superman got sent to Earth in a spaceship from Krypton, his spaceship collided with another alien spaceship, which was Super Menace's. What happened from that collision was Superman's spaceship got copied and duplicated into this other one, creating the persona Super Menace. He landed with parents that definitely were no Martha or Jonathan Kent, and instead of growing up loved, he grew up in a not so good household where he ultimately became a villain. The Super Menace.
Number 10, Nuclear Man. Regarded by many as one of the strangest and most half-baked Superman villains to date, Nuclear Man hasn't had too many appearances outside of his introduction in 1987 Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. He was created by Lex Luthor from a strand of hair containing Superman's DNA, which he threw into a genetic stew. Superman is actually the one responsible for this villain's birth though, as he wasn't fully born until Superman threw the nuclear missile containing the device that had the stew in it into the sun. Having been created using Kryptonian DNA, he possesses powers similar to Superman, such as invulnerability, energy projection, flight, and of course the standard super strength and speed. However, Nuclear Man needs to have constant exposure to sunlight in order to use them. If he's left out of the sun for too long, he becomes completely immobilized and must wait for some more sunlight in order to recharge. In the movie, Superman stopped Nuclear Man for good by causing a sudden solar eclipse when he moved the moon in front of the sun, then dropped him into the heart of a nuclear reactor where he could become an abundant source of energy for the remainder of his days. Now, like I said before, Nuclear Man hasn't made too many appearances outside of Superman 4, but if you want to see him in comic book form, check him out in his one-off appearance in 2018 Superman Volume 5, Number 2. Number 9, Microwave Man. Louis Padgett from Earth 1, known as the costume baddie Microwave Man, has a pretty interesting story despite only appearing in 2 issues back in 1978. Padgett spent 40 years traveling around the galaxy aboard an alien spacecraft before returning back to Earth in October of 1978. Now, not much is known about his life before his interstellar journey other than the fact that he was already known as the villain Microwave Man. Upon his return, Padgett calls upon his alien friends one last time to grant him back his youth, even though doing this would shorten his remaining life to only a few more hours. This didn't seem to bother him, and once he was young again, Padgett assumed the identity of Microwave Man once more and challenged Superman. Now, Padgett's alien friends inform Superman that he only wants the glory of defeating him and will die very soon, so Superman, like the upstanding good guy that he is, allows Padgett to defeat him in a test of strength, after which he dies satisfied, and the aliens come to claim his body to set adrift in space as he had once requested. Making his first appearance in 1978's Action Comics number 487, why not check his short run out for yourself? Number 8. The Puzzler. So little is known about either version of the Puzzler, so don't feel bad if you're not familiar with this character or just generally don't know who they are. The first to take up this name was Valerie Van Haften, a longtime admirer of Superman and someone who wanted nothing more than to get his attention, so she had the idea of becoming a heroine with the intent of one day joining his team. This proved to be a lot harder than she thought, and she quickly turned to crime instead and eventually joined the likes of the Secret Six to get a Get Out of Hell free card. Her powers are actually pretty cool, as she's made up of a bunch of indestructible puzzle pieces that she has full control over, allowing her to deconstruct at will and even fling the pieces at her opponents like a bullet. Now, the second Puzzler is from the Prime Earth and is actually known as Puzzler Bot, a creation of that universe's Puzzler that mimics the abilities of its creator through technological assimilation. That's about it when it comes to these characters, so if you know any more, please let me know in the comments below, but in the meantime, check them out for yourself in 2002's Superman Volume 2, number 187, and 2013's Justice League of America Volume 3, number 3. Number 7. Bloodsport. Now, unfortunately, a cool name doesn't always make for a cool villain. We've seen a few of Lex Luthor's henchmen take up the name Bloodsport, but let's focus on the first, Robert Dubois. Dubois suffered a mental breakdown after his brother had taken his place in the Vietnam War and became a quadruple amputee, resulting in Dubois spending 12 years bouncing between various psychiatric hospitals. Somehow, an agent of Lex Luthor persuades Dubois that Superman is to blame for all his troubles, causing him to adopt the name Bloodsport and go on a needless rampage in downtown Metropolis. Equipped with basic hand-to-hand combat skills and some unnamed tech from Luthor that allowed him to summon any weapon he desired from a remote location, Dubois caused some serious damage before being subdued after his brother confronted him. He spent several years in Stryker Island's penitentiary before Alex Trent, the person who took up the name Bloodsport after him, was brought to his attention. Believing it was the healthiest way for the two to work out their problems, the warden set up a boxing match between the two with Superman as the referee. However, things got out of hand pretty quickly and a riot broke out that allowed Dubois to escape. His freedom didn't last very long though, as he was quickly shot down by a prison guard. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1987 Superman Volume 2, number 4. Number 6. Bruno Mannheim. Bruno Ugly Mannheim had the honor, or I don't know, maybe dishonor depending on how you look at it, of being introduced not in a Superman comic, but in the spin-off series Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Mannheim starts off as a pretty run-of-the-mill stereotypical gangster, trying to just stake a claim for himself in Metropolis, but eventually morphs into something very different and ultimately confusing. With no real powers unless you consider greed and brutality to be special, Mannheim was beefed up by DC when he was made leader of the Intergang, a worldwide crime syndicate that answers to no one other than Darkseid. Basically, Mannheim is this interesting amalgamation of some of the best villains out there, as he is known to go full-blown Hannibal Lecter sometimes, eating his enemies / subordinates that disobey him, and he also flip-flops between being a super genius like Lex Luthor to an overwhelming powerhouse like Darkseid. Yeah, I know, it's all a little bit confusing, so why not check him out for yourself so you can make some more sense of his character, starting with his first appearance in 1971's Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 139. Number 5. The Prankster. Once the extremely popular host of the Uncle Oswald show, Oswald Loomis became the prankster after his show was cancelled and ultimately ended his career in comedy. His first assault on Metropolis was an all-out barrage of practical jokes that ended in his surrender. After a while, Loomis resurfaced with a much younger and athletic body thanks to selling his soul to Lord Satanas, and this changed everything. With a more serious personality and affinity for dangerous tricks, Loomis basically became a slightly less twisted version of the Joker, and his only goal was to make the world laugh via his own twisted ways. When Metropolis was taken over by Brainiac 13, he took advantage of all the futuristic tech available and upgraded his existing gadgets, which proved to be pretty effective against even the likes of Superman. However, this was probably because the Man of Steel was suffering from kryptonite poisoning at the time and did not have full access to his powers. Skip ahead a little bit to when the Joker took over the world and we meet a slightly altered Halloween mask wearing prankster who acts as Joker City's exorcist, whose goal is to expel the evil from those who still believe in science. Thankfully for everyone out there, he was eventually apprehended by Superman and taken to Belle Reve to serve his time for all his crimes. Having made his first appearance all the way back in 1988 Superman Volume 2 number 16, give his story a read for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below.
Number 4. Atomic Skull. So Atomic Skull was created back in the 1970s and has faced Superman numerous times. So basically, Joseph Martin got hit by a gene bomb and became Atomic Skull. His powers include super strength, gives off huge amounts of radiation, and has a flaming radiation type skull for his head. Now, as scary as this guy is, these powers definitely took their toll on Joseph as he started getting brain damage. The damage sort of led to Joseph to change his persona to Atomic Skull. He is known to be quite erratic and can be quite violent due to some hallucinations.
Number 3. Terra Man. Tobias Manning, aka Terra Man, was once a businessman who one day realized just how much damage he was causing to the Earth and its environment. With his newfound conscience, Manning took up a personal vendetta against any company that was causing damage to the environment. Using weapons that focused on turning the environment around his enemies against them, he has caused some serious damage in the name of the Earth, and that earned him a spot on the Secret Society of Villains during the events of Infinite Crisis. Even after this catastrophic event, Terra Man continued his nefarious ways by hijacking a plane over the Middle East. Thanks to Black Adam, he escaped both harm and capture for this crime. However, in hindsight, teaming up with Black Adam probably wasn't the best idea for him, because when Black Adam later appeared to address the media in front of Kahndaq's New York embassy, he ripped Terra Man in half with no warning, and that was the end of this nature-loving villain until he was resurrected during the events of the Blackest Night. Why not give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1990's Superman Volume 2, number 46. Number 2. Hellspawn. Although he was originally created as the nemesis of the Wildcats in the Wildstorm universe, Hellspawn made his way onto the villain roster for Superman when that universe was brought into the DC universe in the New 52 relaunch. As a Daemonite, Hellspawn possesses a ridiculous amount of powers thanks to his alien physiology, such as, but definitely not limited to, chronokinesis, accelerated healing, and telepathy, and when combined with his Akurian host body, he is shown to possess super strength and speed that are able to outmatch even the Man of Steel himself. Hellspawn made his first documented move against humanity by trying to start a nuclear war between the most powerful nations on Earth in order to allow humanity to destroy itself so the planet would be empty for the Daemonites. However, this plan didn't really pan out as he was stopped by Team 1 and Mr. Majestic. In the rebooted Wildstorm universe, Hellspawn is now a super evolved living hive mind because apparently when the number of Daemonites reaches a certain number, a central mind is created. Hellspawn now has the knowledge and intelligence of every member of the entire Daemonite race, and its synthetic body is a rad looking mix of flesh, metal, and fire. Thanks to this, he has moved into a league of his own when it comes to power. However, we are still waiting to see it all in action. Now, I did have to skip over a lot of cool stuff regarding this character, so check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Wildcats number 1. And coming in at number 1, we have Conduit. Kenny Braverman was, funnily enough, born on the same day that Superman's ship arrived on Earth. His fate was not exactly as lucky as our Man of Steel's. While his parents were on the way to the hospital, they ended up having to pull over to the side of the road due to the heavy storm, and he was born curbside, incredibly close to Clark's ship, and the exposure to the kryptonite caused some side effects that would manifest later in life. All throughout their younger years, Clark and Kenny were rivals, competing in everything from sports to girls, and this probably caused some serious self-esteem issues for Kenny because Clark always seemed to come out on top. After high school, Kenny went on to join the CIA and grew more and more reckless as his dormant abilities started to change his personality. Turns out Kenny's body is basically a living conduit for all energy, and it can process, manipulate, and even generate forms of energy in many destructive ways. Upon realizing this, Kenny took up the mantle of Conduit and decided it was finally time to get his revenge on Clark. However, all of his attempts seemed to fail. Later confronted by Superman, Kenny deduced that Clark and the Man of Steel were one and the same, which was perfect for him because they were literally the only people he wanted to kill. So, he set all his sights on getting rid of Superman. Kenny manages to catch Superman and traps him in a mock version of Smallville, and the two face off one-on-one in a replica of their childhood football stadium. Unfortunately for Kenny, he succumbed to his madness and supercharged himself with kryptonite energy, effectively overloading his powers and killing him in the process. Why not give Conduit's story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1994's Superman, The Man of Steel number 0, and let me know what you think in the comments below.
Number 10 is Spike. I talked about Marrow in part 8, so it's only fair that I talk about the animated X-Men Evolution character known as Spike. Spike, or Evan Daniels, was actually the nephew of Aurora Monroe, but his mutant powers are much different than hers. Similar to Marrow, Evan can manipulate manipulate his bones, causing it to project through his skin to create armor and bone spikes that he can use as melee weapons, or he can even launch the spikes from his body as projectiles. Unlike Marrow though, Spike's bones piercing through his skin and being broken off, or fired as projectiles, doesn't actually hurt him, which is a huge benefit. What's super interesting though is that after some time with the Morlocks, Spike was able to make his bone spikes so hot they were almost on fire, which actually kind of raises more questions that go unanswered than anything else. In at number 9 is Avalanche. You don't often get Greek mutants, which makes Dominic Petros a pretty unique character already. Dominic came from the Greek island of Crete, which is somewhere I desperately want to travel to, so if someone can like hook me up with that, that'd be great, thanks. Like a lot of mutants though, he started out as a villain. Originally part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, then X-Corps, Project Wide Awake, Freedom Force, and Villains for Hire. He's gotten around, and with the destructive capabilities of his powers, it honestly kind of makes sense. Avalanche can create super powerful vibration waves from his hands. These waves can cause matter to shatter or crumble, and if he uses it on the earth or even large buildings, he can basically create earthquakes or, wait for it, avalanches. But Avalanche has quite the control over this ability, able to move objects, create tidal waves, cause the ground to move or shatter, or even ride waves of earth as transportation. And he even used his abilities to be a fantastic landscaper. If you guys are enjoying this content, I beg of you, slap that thumbs up button. It's the only thing you can do to prove you're loyal to me. I mean, to show your support. Number 8, the Blob. The Blob, or Frederick Dukes, is one of those characters I really didn't give enough credit to when I was growing up. He can actually do some pretty cool things, and some things that didn't even occur to me. His actual main mutant ability, for example, is that he can essentially become immovable by creating a monodirectional increase of gravity beneath him that extends out about 5 feet in radius from his center of balance. But what's even cooler is that with some training, Blob was able to manipulate his gravitational aura outwards in order to trigger a localized implosion. Also, the Blob is incredibly durable. The fat on the Blob is able to absorb the impact of rifle bullets, cannonballs, bazookas, and even torpedoes. He has even been able to survive being hit by a meteorite that was 50 feet in diameter moving at terminal velocity, which is insane. But that's not all. Blob is also able to manipulate his body, basically shapeshifting to a degree. After undergoing the Mother Vine enhancement process, Blob even developed a secondary mutation, liquid form, and here I thought he was just incredibly fat. Number 7, Caliban. If you have seen Logan, then you'll recognize Caliban as the bald, seemingly albino mutant who hangs out with Logan and Professor X. In that movie, he displays Caliban's main ability, which is being able to detect mutants' X genes, usually within about a 25-mile radius. Although, it's worth noting he has been able to detect particularly powerful mutants from further away before. But what I want to talk about is Caliban's other power that most people don't know. It's called his flight or fight response. So whenever Caliban feels stressed, he manifests 2 extra powers: super strength that can overpower Spider-Woman, and fear absorption. This second power allowed Caliban to absorb the psionic energy created in the fear from others and amplify it back into his environment, doing things like very quickly turning those nearby into a fear-induced panicking mob. This ability was boosted by Apocalypse twice when Caliban served him as both death and pestilence. Number 6, Frenzy. Joanna Cargill, like a lot of the X-Men, started off as a villain. She ran away from her home after her mutant powers activated, and she caused the passing of her not-so-great dad in self-defense. From there, she would join Apocalypse's Alliance of Evil, where she would do battle with the X-Men. She would go on to join the Acolytes and eventually the X-Men too. Now, she works as an agent of S.W.O.R.D. on Abigail Brand's X-Men Red Team. So, with a history like that, she has got to have some cool powers. Well, Frenzy's main power is invulnerability. She possesses steel-hard skin, which has only ever been penetrated by adamantium. She's also highly resistant to extreme hot and cold, as well as radiation, and she can withstand high impact forces like Cyclops' optic beam or a punch from She-Hulk. Speaking of She-Hulk, a byproduct of Frenzy's power is that she has super strength as well, enough to lift around 25 to 75 tons and punch Jennifer Walters back if she wants to. Number 5. Typhoid Mary. Okay, so if you know who the Mutant Legion is, the one who has hundreds of different alternate personalities that all have different mutant powers, well, Mary Walker is sort of like that, only for Mary she has only a handful of alternate personalities and they just allow her to access the powers that just Mary can't access. Those powers include limited amounts of pyrokinesis, telekinesis to move small objects, grabbing her dropped weapons or even turning objects into armor, and telepathy, usually used to manipulate others or influence people to do things without thinking, like kissing her or grabbing their weapons. Her Mary persona is a pretty quiet and timid person with no actual powers, but her other main persona is Typhoid, who is more adventurous, lustful, and violent. She later adopted a few other personas like Bloody Mary, who was sadistic and brutal and pretty much hated all men. Kind of understandable, sort of. And Mutant Zero, who was a cold, calculated, and militaristic person. Number 4. Mask. The Morlock leader, Mask, has a pretty ironic ability. He himself is not exactly the most gorgeous of beings, but his abilities allow him to alter the appearances of others through touch, molding their bodies and features like clay, or just mentally influencing the change he desires. He can alter people's hair and skin color, body structure, and several other features, including turning limbs into tentacles. Mask can also use his powers in combat by making an enemy's limbs attached to their body, like that, or by closing their breathing orifices to limit their combat prowess. His powers of body manipulation later evolved so that he could alter his own flesh, but the new limits of his powers were stated to be a secondary mutation by Charles Xavier. Apparently, when Mask's body was pierced by Shatterstar's sword, Mask instinctively altered his own internal organs to help him survive, and ever since, he's been able to modify his own body. But what he can do exactly in terms of modifying his own body hasn't really been told yet, so we don't really know. Number 3. Christine Cord. Although Christine Cord, now going by Longstrike, doesn't actually have any mutant powers anymore after M-Day, she used to actually go by the name Tattoo, because her mutant ability was a chameleon skin that allowed Christine to form words or patterns on her skin which she could use to camouflage herself or convey messages. But she actually has a secondary ability in the form of biophasing. This basically meant that Christine was able to move through matter, and if she reached into another person, which is a terrifying thought, she could disrupt the neurochemistry of a person and or alter their molecular composition. Unfortunately, we won't know what else she could have possibly done because after losing her abilities and joining the New Warriors, she unfortunately did not live for too much longer. And at number 2 is Jeb Lee. Jeb Lee is one of the final horsemen of the mutant Apocalypse. He was chosen as Famine after Apocalypse watched Jeb using his drums at Gettysburg during the Civil War. Now, using his drums made Apocalypse choose Jeb as a horseman? Yes, it did, because Jeb has an incredibly unique mutant ability, which is to transmit a bio-auditory cancer that feeds on the flesh of all who can hear it whenever he makes a tapping noise, whether that be with his drums or even just tapping his fingers on a table. Jeb has a pretty, dark past, as you can probably imagine. Lee was a Confederate spy during the United States Civil War, walking the battlefields dressed as a Union soldier. Now, after returning back home, his Union Army uniform was discovered and his family was burned alive, which manifested his mutant powers. He then used these powers to go back to war, marching from battle to battle and taking the life of every human in his trail. And at number 1 is Daken. Daken, or Akihiro, possesses a lot of the same abilities as his father, Wolverine. He has a crazy healing factor, superhuman senses, and of course, bone claws. But what some people may not be aware of is the one mutation he possesses that neither his father nor his sisters possess. That power would be pheromone control. Daken has empathic pherokinetic abilities that allow him to use his pheromones to manipulate the emotional state and sensory perceptions of others. He has used this to instill intense fear, happiness, depression, fascination, and a false sense of security in others. The false sense of security, though, is the definitely most interesting one, as it has allowed him to sneak up on others without them even worrying that he could be there, which is so cool. He has also used this ability to alter others' depth perception and vision, making them fight sluggishly. He can also control his own pheromones to make him basically untrackable, even to someone like Wolverine. Now there are limits to Daken's pherokinesis, but it is such a cool ability.
Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the Maker's Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so it was lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 6. Starbrand. I kinda miss when Brandy was just like a little Starbrand baby. But of course, this is comics, and heroes can't stay babies forever. In fact, they can't even stay a baby for more than a year apparently, especially if they're joining the Avengers, which I kinda get. Technically, the young Starbrand, Baby Selby, later given the first name Brandy, was in the care of the Avengers, not really specifically on the team, kinda sorta like their ward. But despite being one of the youngest heroes to ever be affiliated with that team, this little Starbrand also would often help the team out on missions, being so insanely powerful. Starbrand possesses the Starbrand, which grants her a great amount of basically cosmic power. She is capable of interstellar flight and flight in general, energy manipulation and projection, creating energy blasts, and technically should also be super durable and have some level of healing factor. The Starbrand's power is believed to be potentially infinite when it comes to their power levels, making Starbrand one of the most powerful members on the team, in baby form, child form, or young adult form as she currently is as of the end of issue 52 of the current 2018 Avengers series. Number 5. Ghost Rider. While Starbrand might have the greatest potential for power, and we aren't sure entirely what she's capable of just yet, Robbie Reyes is a bit more experienced when it comes to his powers. And even when he was less experienced, he actually accidentally killed one of the previous Starbrands, Kevin Connor, in Marvel Legacy. So for those reasons, I thought we should give him a bit of a boost when it comes to his ranking on this list. Robbie Reyes first appeared in the comic scene in 2014 in All New Ghost Rider issue number 1. He is an all-new Ghost Rider, just like the series claims. During a street race gone wrong, Robbie was killed and ended up possessed by the ghost who haunted the car that he was driving, becoming the new Ghost Rider. He joined up with the Avengers recently in the comics, and I think he makes a great addition to the team. I personally love Robbie Reyes, so yeah, I'm here for it. Number 4. Winter Hulk. While Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk may have joined the Avengers long ago, first joining up back in the 80s, she's gone through a lot of changes since then. One recent and major one, which also returned her to her smaller, smarter, more playful and sassy, yet still very powerful form, happened recently in Avengers comics. For a brief time, She-Hulk, then known as just Hulk, ended up becoming Winter Hulk. Winter Hulk happened as a result of Jen allowing herself to be kidnapped by the Winter Guard of Russia to try and figure out what they were up to. What devious things are they planning? In the end, they attempted to mind wipe and brainwash Hulk to turn her into one of their agents. And they kinda succeeded. Although the process was interrupted, for a brief time Jen acted as their agent, Winter Hulk. However, as Winter Hulk, Jen still managed to fight against her programming, and alert her fellow Avengers when sent to attack Namor and Atlantis. In the end, Winter Hulk was forced to absorb a ton of radiation to protect the citizens of Atlantis. She managed to discharge the gamma radiation she had absorbed safely, and as a result was returned to her original form, ultimately deciding to retire from the Avengers team after these events and return to practicing law. And now we have a new She-Hulk series that I have heard nothing but good things about. I really need to get reading my first issue. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points. That's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark. That's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how I'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him. That's how good he is.
And at 10, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love, as a corpse, which I love even more. However, he was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling narcotics to the criminal underworld. Because of course he did. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain and makes me think about why people aren't actually like afraid of pigs. If you put me in a room with this guy and like his pet pig, I would be scared of both. Professor Pig, if you couldn't already tell, wears a pig mask despite him spelling pig incorrectly in his name, along with a butcher's apron and what at times appears to be some form of like thrown together surgical outfit, like if he was like trying to get a last minute Halloween costume. It's freaking weird, okay? And he ends up like brainwashing and controlling various people, and then he ends up calling them Dollatrons. Honestly, I don't know what I would do, okay? I would just run away from this guy. And at 7, Scarecrow. The Scarecrow has made an appearance in the Dark Knight movies, however, those aren't in the DCEU, at least yet. Until this point, the closest we've gotten is the Fear Gas from the Arrowverse crossover event of Elseworlds. However, that gas made some insane hallucinations that ended up with the Flash, who at the time was Oliver Queen's, speed to be useless, which would be incredibly overpowered when it comes to the rest of the DCEU. When Oliver and Barry were fighting, Barry was landing hits on Oliver despite not having his super speed, and Oliver wasn't knocking Barry away with super speed punches. This being used on a greater scale, like we would see Scarecrow do in an actual movie, would absolutely destroy the world, especially with heroes like Superman and Martian Manhunter. And we know that this is how the Scarecrow's gas would operate in the DCEU, because thanks to the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, we got confirmation that Ezra Miller's Flash and Grant Gustin's Flash exist in the same multiverse. Or perhaps the cinematic universe exists within the antimatter universe. It would explain the darker themes. Either way, we know that's how the gas would work, and that would be a little too much to handle in one movie.
Number 6. Bane. Bane is known for being one of Batman's all-around strongest villains, but let's not forget that Bane also brings smarts to the table. Okay, so maybe not if we're counting the Harley Quinn animated series version of Bane, but comic book Bane at least is known for also possessing a brilliant mind. A lot of people forget that about him. He was the mastermind, in fact, behind the death of Alfred, which was also part of his scheme to break the Batman in a much more all-around way. Granted, he also took out Alfred because his demands were not being met. He had basically ordered Batman not to make a rescue attempt, but then Damian Wayne did make a rescue attempt because he didn't listen to the warning that was given to them, and so Alfred died by Bane's hands after Damian's attempt failed. Bane, being such a massive man of muscle, also makes it hard to bring him to life. He's not only a hard villain to write, but he's also a difficult one to cast and depict as well, because he just looks like literally a brick house.
Halfway through in number 5, Arkham Knight. Not only is this character loved by some of the people who played the Batman Arkham series of games, the Arkham Knight is a highly skilled military technician who possesses expert knowledge of Batman's tactics and fighting style, which can be attributed to the fact that he was personally trained by the Vigilante, being revealed as Jason Todd, a moment that we all remember, for better or worse. He is a master of hand-to-hand combat, martial arts, and marksmanship. The high-tech military-like battle suit that he wears further enhances his physical strength, speed, and durability. When Batman was ambushed by the Dark Knight, he was able to knock the Dark Knight off his feet with one punch. This absolute mastery of Batman's tactics would make him a hella good villain, however the amount of power he has would probably be too much for the DCU. They already had Batman fight Superman and win, so they would have to supercharge Arkham Knight to make it an actually interesting fight, which would just ruin the character even more than some would consider him already ruined.
Number 4. Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, depending on what you prefer. A lot of people prefer Ra's, I prefer Ra's. We can all coexist, it's a beautiful world. Ra's is one of Batman's all-time greatest nemesis. While he might not possess direct superpowers of any kind, like most of Batman's rogues, he is one of the most skilled fighters and has one of the most brilliant minds. Like Bane. I like people with brilliant minds, apparently. Too bad Ra's usually uses his brilliant mind to concoct all sorts of schemes in order to topple governments, sow chaos, and gain power the world over. Ra's al Ghul is the head of the League of Assassins and has come close to completely defeating Batman in the past, with him even successfully using Batman's own research during the Tower of Babel JLA story to defeat all of Batman's superpowered colleagues on the team.
But ultimately, in number 2, the Holiday Killer. More commonly referred to as Holiday, they are one of the principal antagonists of the story Batman The Long Halloween. A serial killer operating in Batman's early career, the murderer targets various associates and members of Gotham's crime families. Holiday's identity is only revealed in the final issue of the story, though their identity is apparently resolved, it's still left up to question. After the events of Batman Year 1, Batman, Gordon, and Harvey Dent unite to take down the Carmine Falcone, the leader of the Falcone crime family and the most powerful criminal in Gotham City. Around the same time, though, a mysterious assailant begins targeting mafiosi members and killing them. Each of the killings use the same MO. The victim shot with a .22 pistol with a baby bottle cap used as a silencer, and a memento is left signifying each holiday, like example jack-o'-lantern for Halloween. Each victim is also connected either directly or indirectly to the Falcone or Maroni crime families, though at least 2 are connected to Holiday's operations. Several red herrings are also left to misdirect readers' assumptions towards other characters. The identity of Holiday is apparently revealed at the end of the series, however 3 major characters are directly connected to the Holiday identity, so you can't really be sure which one it is. Finally, in at number 1, the Joker. The Joker has undergone many revisions since his 1940 debut. The most common interpretation of the character is that of a man who, while disguised as the criminal Red Hood, is pursued by Batman and falls into a vat of chemicals that bleaches his skin, colors his hair green and his lips red, and then drives him insane. I mean, I don't know how it would bleach your skin, color your hair, and then change the color of your lips, but hey, whatever. The reasons why Joker was disguised as Red Hood and his identity before his transformation have changed over time. However, the lack of solid, consistent origin is only part of what makes this character character so mysterious. During the Darkseid War storyline, Batman uses Metron's Mobius chair to find out what the Joker's real name is. The chair's answer though leaves Batman in disbelief. It's only revealed what it said in the DC Universe Rebirth one-shot, where Batman informs Hal Jordan that the chair told him that there were actually 3 different Jokers, not just one. This revelation was the basis for the miniseries Batman 3 Jokers. 3 Jokers reveals that the 3 Jokers who work in tandem include the Criminal, which is the methodical mastermind based on the Golden Age Joker, the Clown, which is a goofy prankster based on the Silver Age Joker, and the Comedian, a psychopathic killer based on the Modern Age Joker who is obsessed with Batman. So yeah, certainly a mysterious character who has stood the test of time, and that's partly why people love him so much. You knew he was going to be on this list.
Number 9, the Huntress. Making her first appearance in All-Star Comics issue 69, nice, back in 1977, Helena is a bad lawyer for Cranston, Grayson, and Wayne. But of course, that's not all. Earth 2 is home to the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. When she was only 19 years old, her mother, Selina Kyle, who used to be Catwoman, died in a tragic mishap. And to add insult to injury, literally, the henchman, Silky Cernak, was the reason behind a photo that came out that shows Selina Kyle as Catwoman a police officer. So of course, Helena was pretty pissed and wanted to go make things right. So she took a page out of her parents' book and became the Huntress. She went after Silky Smooth Cernak and got him arrested. And her mother, turns out, didn't even kill anybody. That photo was tampered with. Hashtag photoshopped. She kept the suit and attitude and eventually wound up on the Justice Society of America. See, if you want the truth, guys, you just gotta get a super persona and then throw bad guys in nets. It's that easy.
Number 9, Van-El. Van-El comes to us from the famous Superman story for the man who has everything. He was a non-powered son of Superman who existed in Superman's sweetest dreams. Superman experienced these dreams after being exposed to an alien parasitic organism known as the Black Mercy. It drains its victims' life energy while giving them pleasant, hallucinogenic dreams. In Superman's dreams, Krypton was never destroyed and he still lived there. He was married and had a son named Von-El. Technically, if they were on Earth, Von-El would likely have powers similar to Superman, but because he and Kal-El were on Krypton, where there is no yellow sun to power either of them, they were both just normal, like other Kryptonians. Number 8, Ur-Zod. Ur-Zod comes to us from the Justice Lord's universe. He was created to be the perfect genetic heir to the throne of Earth, and to help usher in an era of peace after years of war. He was created using the genetic material of Wonder Woman and Lord Superman, but is considered to be somewhat weaker in terms of power levels than his parents. Originally, Brainiac got a hold of Ur-Zod, planning to use and raise him as his own weapon of destruction. Fortunately, he was saved by Superman from the Batman Beyond universe and taken in by their Justice League. While his inherited powers might not be as strong as his parents, Ur-Zod also has the unique ability of being able to control technology, which would prove useful later on in his fight against Brainiac. Man, Brainiac's always making all these fake children. Or well, I guess he didn't make this one, but he wanted to like mold it. Brainiac's always up to no good. That's what I'm learning from this list. Number 7, Lara Lane Kent. Lara Kent is the unborn daughter of Lois Lane and Superman in the Injustice universe. In a dream that Superman has during year 3, we get to see what her life would have been like had that fateful day gone differently for Superman and he hadn't been made to kill his wife and unborn daughter. In this alternate dream reality, Lara is raised by both her parents, her first word notably being mom. When her powers begin to manifest, she is taught by her father and his friends on the Justice League about how to use them. Lara at one point as a young adult looks down at the Earth with her father from space and wonders if the fighting and crime will ever stop. Her dad tells her that they could, if they wished, use their powers to enforce order to save the humans of Earth from themselves, forcing them to have peace. But Lara teases her dad, responding that he sounds like a B-grade villain saying that. Instead, Lara ends up working as an ambassador for the League, helping everyday people to learn how to fight for themselves, instead of just always continuing to have superheroes fighting for them. Number 6, Ariella Kent. Ariella Kent is the daughter of Linda Danvers, formerly Supergirl, and Earth 1 Superman. Ariella lived happily with her parents, presumably until the Spectre informed Linda that she needed to return to her own parallel reality. If you're wondering if it's creepy that Supergirl and Superman have a child together in an alternate timeline, it kinda is if you just hear that without context, but with context, it really isn't that creepy. Linda Danvers is not a Supergirl who is related at all to Clark Kent, not even in her own reality, and even if she had been, which she isn't, this Clark Kent was actually from a different alternate Earth altogether. So no, they're not related. After Linda returned to her reality, Spectre agreed to allow her daughter to live. Ariella, as a 6-year-old girl, was supremely powerful, but didn't have the maturity to wield her powers wisely, because she's just a little kid. She was capable of time travel and mostly traveled through space, playing and unknowingly creating mass destruction wherever she went. That's what happens when you're a kid that is that powerful. You just play with planets and blow them up. Yikes.
Coming in at number 5, we have Terry McGinnis, aka the next Batman. Originally appearing in the beloved animated series Batman Beyond, Terry was the sarcastic and wisecracking next-generation Batman in a dystopian future Gotham, led by an elderly and retired Bruce Wayne. However, unlike Nightwing, Terry's connection to Bruce wound up being more than just as an adoptive father, as it was eventually revealed that Bruce Wayne is biologically Terry's father, as Terry's actual dad had his genetics replaced by those of Bruce Wayne, essentially making the two heroes related. Even without this connection though, Terry McGinnis stood out as a worthy successor to Batman, developing his own iconic rogues gallery and even being able to defeat villains that the original Batman never could, such as the Joker.
Number 4. Kara Kent Wayne. Kara was the daughter of Superman and Lois from the same alternate Earth of 3839, born 3 years after her brother. She herself had superpowers similar to her father's, though weaker due to her hybrid human and Kryptonian physiology. Kara would grow up to become a hero and take up the mantle Supergirl, and ended up falling in love with the newest Batman, who was actually Bruce Wayne Jr., the son of the original Batman. Bruce Jr. took up the mantle of Batman following the previous Batman, Dick Grayson's, death. At Kara's wedding, her brother Joel showed up, having received powers from the serum Lex Luthor had given him, and attacked his family, killing Kara. Number 3. Jonathan Lane Kent. I love that throughout Superman stories we get to see how powerfully good the super family can be and how powerfully evil they can potentially be as well. Bottom line, either way you slice it, they're powerful. John Lane Kent is the son of Superman and Lois Lane from an alternate future. It was believed that he had died due to an irreparable medical issue with his DNA. Shockingly, it was later revealed that the villain Harvest managed to actually save John, taking his body to the past and resurrecting him. Harvest had his own plans for what John would become and turned him into a villain, using him as a weapon to destroy all metahumans. John is more powerful than his father, sharing his powers, but also possessing the ability to turn invisible. It's later revealed that the original Superboy, Kon-El, was basically a clone of John, and not Superman like we originally thought. Shocking.
Number 2. Athanasia Al Ghul. Making her first appearance in the comics on Injustice 2 issue 3, Athanasia, she's referred to as the daughter of the Bat. Talia kept her as a secret from Bruce, because of course, that's how it works in this world always, so many secrets. But she let Damian become a hero and work with Bruce. So, nice. Athanasia was a member of the League of Assassins. She came out of hiding after the fall of Superman's regime and worked with her mother and grandfather, Thomas Wayne. She was caught in El Diablo's explosion and wasn't shielded, presumed dead, until she popped up in Gorilla City after being resurrected from the Lazarus Pit.
Number 1. Jonathan Samuel Kent, or just John Kent if you will. This is Superman and Lois Lane's child who was born during the events of Convergence. He grew up without really ever knowing the truth of who his parents were, growing up relatively normal but suspicious of what his parents really did. The Kents changed their name to the Whites, escaping the fate of their dying universe and taking up residence on the new Prime Earth, trying to raise John normally and not get in the way of their alternate selves in this new world. Lois still worked as a writer and journalist, but publishing her works under the pseudonym Author X, and Superman kept his superheroic activities under wraps and secretive, going out at night and appearing as a shadow of Superman, as this world kinda already had their own Kal-El. Eventually, the New 52 Superman died, and so the Whites became the Kents once more, and stepped into their usual roles once again. John's powers manifested when he first hit puberty, discovering his laser vision when he accidentally killed the family cat. Shortly afterward, he would take up the mantle Superboy and become a hero alongside his father, starting a rivalry and later a friendship with Batman's son, Damian Wayne. But that's all behind him now, as he went to space, grew up quickly, and now he's a member of the Legion of Superheroes and goes on adventures in the future. because comics. Number 10, Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was once Carol Danvers and is now Kamala Khan. And of course, for this list, we're focusing on Kamala, who was a new addition to the Avengers team in 2015, after making her first unnamed appearance only 2 years earlier in 2013 in the comics. Kamala is a huge Carol Danvers fan, which is what inspired her to take up the mantle Miss Marvel after Carol dropped it, taking up the Captain Marvel mantle instead herself. Kamala as Miss Marvel has powers which allow her to alter her body's physiology, allowing her to stretch, change size and shape, and in theory, straight up shapeshift. Her powers come from inhuman heritage, which was activated by her exposure to the Terrigen bomb. Kamala joined the team for a time during all new, all different Avengers, and remains a fan favorite hero at Marvel Comics. And to clarify before we move on to point 9, this is going to be a list of Avengers that have recently come onto the team, as opposed to new Avengers, which is kind of its own thing. There's a lot of new Avengers, so I just wanted to clarify that. Number 9, Wasp. Not the same Wasp who years ago was actually the leader of the Avengers for a while. Nuh-uh, we are not talking about Janet Van Dyne here, we are talking about Nadia Van Dyne, who despite her seemingly misleading name is actually the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. After her mother Maria was kidnapped and later killed, Nadia ended up being raised in the Red Room, considered a valuable asset due to her natural aptitude for science and academia, believed to be somewhat in part due to the fact that she was Hank's naturally born daughter. Nadia would eventually escape the Red Room and attempt to locate her father in the US, only to find out that he had recently died during a fight against Ultron. Nadia felt compelled to meet her stepmother, Janet, desiring to become the new Wasp. The two ended up getting along well, and Janet even gave Nadia her blessing to take her last name, seeing her as family. Hence, Nadia became both Nadia Van Dyne and the new Wasp, also going on to join the Avengers team. Number 8, Spider-Man. Peter Parker as Spider-Man has of course teamed up with the Avengers before, but Miles Morales as Spider-Man is a newer addition, not just in terms of the Avengers team, but also still relatively new in terms of him existing in 616. Miles Morales is originally a Spider-Man who hails from the Ultimate Comics line originating in Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. He was given a new home on Earth 616 after his world had been destroyed as a result of showing kindness to and sharing food with Molecule Man during the Secret Wars event. True story. Thank goodness for pocket cheeseburgers. Miles has a power set very similar to Peter's in many ways, but also has a few unique abilities of his own. He can shock his opponents with venom blasts and can sneak up on them with his spider camouflage, which he can use to appear invisible. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more newest additions to the Avengers we've seen in recent years, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 7, Beast. Beast is Hank McCoy, one of the original members of the X-Men and also one of the brainiest members of the Secret Avengers. He ends up being recruited for his brilliant mind, but there is a lot that Beast brings to the table when it comes to his skill and his power set. In the comics, it's also been established that he is incredibly, impossibly agile and dexterous. He also possesses superhuman strength, endurance, and durability. He has a healing factor which allows him to recover more quickly than most from injuries, and also slows his aging. His senses are heightened, and he has strong telepathic defenses, which can protect him against even some of the strongest psionics in the world of Marvel. He also has a few unique powers, such as his ability to be aware of the time stream, which makes him more aware if something is altered or otherwise out of place within it. He's also believed to have some level of pheromone powers. In other words, you really shouldn't underestimate Beast. I don't say it enough, but he truly is a beast of a superhero who brings a lot to the table. I'm happy I was able to put him on this list. Do you agree that Hank should be above Ant-Man? I don't know, but I think he deserves it, you know? Not enough appreciation for Hank McCoy. Number 6, Moon Knight. Moon Knight was considered a questionable recruit to the post-Dark Reign Secret Avengers team the Cap brought together, and yet he still makes a lot of sense when you consider just how dangerous and how capable he is. Moon Knight might live with a dissociative identity disorder, but this often doesn't get in his way of completing whatever mission he is on in his own heroic life, nor does it often affect his ability to be a hero. Still, the other heroes on the team did personally question if Moon Knight was the right fit and the right pick. Moon Knight has access to amazing weapons and tech thanks to being outfitted by Stephen Grant, another prominent persona that resides in Mark Spector's psyche, who is a millionaire. He also has tons of intel, which is provided to him through one of his other personas, Jake Lockley, who's a cab driver. When it comes to his power set, he is an incredibly skilled fighter who has the favor of a god, the moon god Khonshu, on his side, and this also makes him hard to kill because usually Khonshu will just bring him back to life. He's also got enhanced strength, endurance, and agility at night, especially if it's a full moon. Moon power, baby! Get that moon power. Number 4. Black Widow. Black Widow makes for a great addition to Captain America's Secret Avengers team that is formed following the end of Norman Osborn's Dark Reign. This team was one that Captain America brought together to basically serve as his Black Ops team. Their main mission was to help clean up all the messes that Norman Osborn had left about during his time ruling Hammer and the Dark Avengers. Considering that Natasha is a highly skilled and trained assassin who also has extensively reflected on the moral dilemma that comes attached to things like assassinating people and Black Ops, she makes a great fit. She is extremely experienced with walking that fine line between getting less savory jobs done, but also making sure you don't lose yourself and that you only do as much as is really necessary. Not only is she highly trained and skilled, but it's also implied that she technically has superpowers after being exposed to a Russian variation of the super soldier serum during her time in the Red Room. It's how she can stay so youthful and she looks so young forever. That Russian super soldier serum. Making sense of how is Black Widow even still alive and what is going on. Number 3. Phoenix. While Phoenix is definitely one of the most powerful superheroes to be on the Avengers team, her history with them is a bit more lengthy than you might initially think, which is why I ranked her a little bit lower on this list than I normally would. Phoenix herself was back on the original Avengers team, the prehistoric Avengers, or the Avengers of 1 million BC. This avatar for Phoenix was known as Firehair. However, Firehair only made her first appearance even in 2017 in the comics, so she's also kinda new in a way, even though she's super old. Does that make sense? Maya Lopez, aka Echo, is the current host of the Phoenix Force and the current Phoenix, who also finds herself on the Avengers team. Her being Phoenix is new, but her being on the Avengers team is not new. She rejoined the team in 2021 as Phoenix, which is quite new, like I said, but she actually was a member of the Avengers way back in 2005, when she was using the mantle of Ronin. Still, Maya being Phoenix and being part of the Avengers altogether is quite fresh right now, despite both the Phoenix Force's history with the prehistoric team and Maya's own history with the present day team. And of course, Phoenix is one of the most powerful entities in the entire Marvel universe. So despite her being kind of a new old combo thing, we have to show respect to the blazingly brilliant and powerful Maya Lopez, aka Echo, aka Phoenix, on this list. Number 2. Cable. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up being on the Avengers Unity division, which was meant to bring together Avengers and X-Men after events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created tension between the two superhero groups of Earth. Series-wise, the team was known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue number 4. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife at the time, Mr. Sinister created clone of Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor. Despite Maddie being his birth mother, Jean has also been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of basically raising him, making her kind of like his telepathically retcon mom, with Maddie becoming more like a surrogate mother in terms of her relationship with Nate, formerly known to her as Baby Christopher. Oh, baby Christopher. Number 1. Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is kinda like all of the Avengers merged together. At least, that's what the original version of this character was like. They made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also recently reappeared in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day Avengers and Hulk comic. They showed up in the Avengers portion of that double feature story comic. Here, Avengers Prime is the leader of the Deathlock Avengers forces, who basically stands guard guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. Presumably, this is some version of Avenger Prime that decided to stay omnipotent and bonded together. At least that's what I'm assuming. Some people are assuming different things. When we saw Avenger Prime last, or an alternate version of them if you will, they were created using a ritual which allowed the team of Mighty Avengers to bond together. Technically, Avenger Prime stands to be the most powerful of the Avengers, as they should be made up of one or more teams or rosters potentially combined together. Now, of course, some people believe that Avenger Prime is actually some sort of alternate version or some future version of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, but we don't really know for sure yet. Whoever they are though, they definitely seem to have a lot of time, a lot of power, and a lot of resources on their hands, especially for being a shadowy figure.